Flat earthers consider our current Earth model as false. And the flat earth theory surfaced centuries ago and has been believed by some ancient civilizations the earth was flat. The modern flat earthers label the spherical model as a government lie based on several theories and beliefs. The modern flat earthers originate from the English writer Samuel Rowbotham. In 1849 he published a pamphlet called Synthetic Astronomy, and the earth is not a globe. The title of the pamphlet to present the world his scientific research known as today as the Flat Earth Theory. One of them is the Flat Earth Society founded by the Australian Stephen MacDonald on August 5th, 2013, a place for free thinkers, right? According to the website. Free thinkers, remember that. But how can it be noon and midnight at the same time? It is certainly impossible with a flat earth and a sun millions of times more massive, says Psylink, a website. Pictures and videos taken by orbiting satellites and space stations are certainly the most definitely proof that the earth is a sphere, they conclude. I agree. The flat earth theory don't like Columbus at all. In the book The Works of Washington Irving, Columbus' findings that the earth was spherical was raised scriptural objections. And let me quote from the book what I have read, page 82, second paragraph. The passage cited from Lactonius to confute Columbus is in a strain of gross ridicule, unworthy of so grave a theologian. There is anyone so foolish, he asked, to believe that there are antipodes with their feet opposite to ours, people who walk with their feet and heels upwards and their heads hanging down, and that there is a part of the world in which all things are topsy-turvy, where the trees grow with their branches downward, and where it rains, hails, snows upward. The idea of the roundness of the earth, he adds, was the cause of inventing this fable of the antipodes with their heels in the air, for these philosophers, having once erred, go on in their absurdities, divining one with another. Objections of a graver nature were advanced on the authority of St. Augustine, and he pronounced the doctrine of antipodes to be incompatible with historical foundation of our faith, since to assert that were inhabited lands of the opposite side of the globe will be maintained that there were nations not descending from Adam, it being impossible for them to have passed the intervening ocean, and this will be therefore to discredit the Bible, which expressly declares that all men are descended from one common parent. The free thinkers or flat earthers were not thinking really free. Upon Columbus discovered the earth had no edge and discredited him, he pronounces the doctrine of antipodes to be incompatible with historical foundations of our faith, or this will be therefore to discredit the Bible, which expressly declares that all men are descended from one common parent. So it's a faith thing. When Columbus unwillingly proved the earth had no edge, it became clear the flat earth theory is more faith-based. According to the flat earth theory, the Bible mentioned earth is flat. Based on that, the flat earthers are in denial and won't accept the truth.
The Earth is not flat. We live on a spinning globe. It's amazing to me that I actually have to say those words in 2016. But there are a number of scientifically confused people that have convinced themselves and are trying to convince others that we live on a stationary, flat plane. But we don't need to believe them. We can prove the globe and the heliocentric model to ourselves without them, just as generations of people did long before NASA or anyone else went to space. In a series of short videos, I would like to teach you how you can prove to yourself with your own eyes and experimentation that we live on a spinning globe. Several things that we can see with our own eyes clearly demonstrate that the Earth is a globe and cannot be adequately explained by the flat Earth model, no matter how you try to twist reality. These include the apparent movements of the sun, moon, planets, and stars, moon phases, lunar eclipses, time zones, and many others. But in this first video, I'm going to focus on just one thing: the horizon. The most important thing to understand is that the horizon is flat. That's right. From our vantage point, even from a high mountain or an airplane, the horizon is flat. Flat earthers, and also many globalists, for lack of a better term, seem to think that the horizon should look curved to us. That's flat wrong. And I think this is the single biggest reason there even is a flat earth community, the biggest source of confusion. You are expecting to see a curve where there is none to be seen. You are looking for the wrong thing. To picture what I mean, look at this orange. If I take a thin slice of it, I get a round disc. The edges of it, where the knife cut through, is a flat circle. That is what you see when you look at the horizon, the edges of a circle. The edges don't curve side to side, they run straight across our view. And since we are always in the center of the circle, they don't curve down. When you can see the horizon in all directions, it is the same distance away in all directions. So when you spin around, it looks exactly like a straight line and comes back around to join itself. Think about that. If it were curved down, it would not come back around and join itself at the same level. Even from a high mountain or from an airliner, the horizon is flat, because the Earth is so big and we are so close to it. All we are ever going to see is a small, flat, round slice of the ball of the Earth. There's a handy website that will calculate the distance to the horizon for any viewing height, and it also tells you how much of an object will be hidden behind the horizon if it's past the horizon. The site is metabunk.org/curve. Let's look at an example. This is the view from the J.P. Morgan Chase Tower, the tallest building in Houston. The observation deck is 879 feet above the flat Texas landscape. According to the Metabunk site calculation, the horizon is about 36 miles away. So this is what the horizon looks like on a map: a circle with a 36-mile radius. As we zoom out, you can see what a small part of the Earth this is, under 1% of the Earth's diameter of 7,918 miles. And when we show it edge on, you can really see that it is just a small, flat, round slice of the large Earth. But getting back to the orange, you might be thinking that the slice of the orange is not flat. It curves down in all directions from the center. Well, yes, that is true for the orange, and it's also true for the Earth. And you can clearly see that on the orange. But on the Earth, it is simply impossible to see, because the Earth is so tremendously big. If you are 6 feet tall, and you stand at the shore of the ocean, or on a flat desert plain, the horizon is about 3 miles away, and the change in vertical height of the surface is only 1.5 feet, spread evenly over the entire 3-mile distance. You just aren't going to be able to see that. It's way too subtle. As an illustration, this is a Google Earth picture of the New York City skyline from Caven Point, New Jersey, just over 3 miles away. The Earth does indeed curve down away from the viewer in this picture, but it is just about 1.5 feet spread over 3 miles, so it is just too slight to see. The Statue of Liberty is in the picture, and it's 305 feet tall, and only 1.2 miles away, and look how small it looks. But if the horizon is flat, how does it prove around Earth, you might ask? It's what happens when objects are past the horizon that reveals the curve. Sailors, for many centuries, have noticed that ships sailing away from you in the distance disappear bottom first and sail last. If you live near a large body of water, you can easily see this for yourself with binoculars or a telescope. But here is a video you can watch of a cruise liner going over the horizon. See the link in the description for the full video. This only works on a curved Earth. The view of the ship is obviously going behind the curve, and you can always calculate exactly how far away this will happen, depending on how high you are up from the water. The higher up, the farther away the horizon. Flat earthers try to explain this phenomenon away in a few ways. Some claim that the ships aren't actually hidden by the curve, they are just at the limits of our ability to see them, and if you zoom in, they come back into full view. But whenever they try to demonstrate this, they use a boat that is near the horizon, but not beyond it, like this one. Notice, he did not show a boat that was hidden at the bottom. This is just a blatantly wrong example to use. I don't know how they think this explains anything. The examples they use are always not beyond the horizon, but near it, or right at it. To show the effect, you have to show a boat partially obscured by the horizon, like this, not this. Some will show a boat in choppy seas and claim that the swells are causing the obscuring of the bottom of the boat. But again, that's a bad example to use. Do you think there are swells big enough to hide half of this cruise ship? Also, you will need a clear day and one without extreme cold. Cold air near the water can create a number of different mirage effects because the temperature differences actually bends the light. But you can usually tell when this is happening, and it only happens in certain conditions. Also, the sun and moon rising and setting beyond the horizon perfectly shows that the Earth is curved, and they are much easier to see than distant boats. They both emerge from or slide behind the horizon exactly as we expect on a globe, and not at all what we would see on a flat Earth. Flat earthers claim that the sun and moon circle above the flat Earth, and the rising and setting is due to them coming in and out of view due to perspective. As explained, and I use the term loosely, in this clip from Flat Earther P. Brain.
Okay, here's a little illustrator or a little cartoon from a website called timeanddate.com. It's really funny that they would have a perfect illustration of a sun rising and setting on a flat Earth due to perspective. You'll notice that it rises from below the horizon and sets below the horizon. Now you might be saying, well, how's that possible? I can see now you're saying that it rises and lowers due to perspective, but how does it disappear below the horizon? Well, I got a theory about that. Because of the fact that all parallel lines and planes converge at your eye-level horizon, this is according to the perspective, I'm not making this up, if in fact, and they do, they converge at your eye-level horizon visually, then it makes sense that after that point, they diverge, meaning they then separate, so the sun would continue on a downward track. As you can see from my illustration here, the lines would go to your horizon, and then afterwards they would spread out and separate, kind of like a starburst.
Two huge problems here. One is that he shows a sun in the animation that always stays the same size, which indeed is what we see in reality. But if it were disappearing due to perspective, it would be getting bigger as it rises and smaller as it sets. But in his animation, it does not. The edges of the circle of the sun would get farther apart and closer together, just as all the sight lines he drew in do. Why would everything get smaller as it moves away except the sun or moon? That's absurd. Here is what we actually see. The sun and moon slide behind the horizon, and maintain their visual sides. That is not perspective. Perspective works both vertically and horizontally. Objects farther away appear smaller and closer together in both directions. If the sun and moon were just circling over the flat earth and getting too far away to see, then we would see them shrink and fade out of view as they set. But we don't. Flat earthers will show you videos where the sun appears to grow or shrink, but this is an illusion due to thick clouds. You can always see that there are clouds near the horizon when they try to show this. Normally, this illusion does not happen. The second way this so-called perspective matrix fails is even more ridiculous. The lines drawn in the illustration are lines of sight, and they correctly converge to the vanishing point, the point at which you can't see farther. But he claims that past the vanishing point, the lines diverge. What? What lines? It's a vanishing point. There are no lines of sight past a vanishing point. There is nothing to diverge. You can't have lines of sight past what you could see. And if it did work that way, we could see objects beyond the horizon and they would be upside down. Think about that. No, this is totally wrong. Another way to demonstrate the curve is with distant city skylines. A good example is the city of Toronto, viewed from across Lake Ontario. The city is dominated by the distinctive CN Tower, currently the third tallest tower in the world at 1,815 feet. There are many pictures online of the Toronto skyline, viewed from Niagara-on-the-Lake, New York, 30 miles away. With the Metabunk calculation, we see that 486 feet of the tower, or about 26% of it, should be hidden behind the curve of the Earth from that distance. And this is exactly what we see, as you can easily tell when compared to an image of the full tower at the same scale. Flat Earthers sometimes show cities in the distance that, according to them, should be below the horizon but are clearly visible, and claim this proves the flat Earth. This can be difficult to disprove because you never really know where the picture was taken from. They may have gotten the distance wrong, or the height of the observation wrong, or the calculation wrong. One example they use is the Chicago skyline seen from 60 miles away across Lake Michigan. At a viewing height of 6 feet, we calculate that 2,166 feet should be below the horizon at 60 miles. So they are right that the entire city of Chicago should be completely hidden. And it is hidden nearly all the time, but sometimes it can be seen from that far away due to a type of atmospheric light refraction phenomenon called a superior mirage. A superior mirage is caused by colder air below warmer air, which bends the light around the curve of the Earth. This event sometimes makes the news for the very reason that it is a rare occurrence.
Until I found this photo from Grand Mere State Park. This is from Joshua Nowicki, and what you're seeing here is a mirage. We typically would not be able to see this from the Lake Michigan shore. We talked about this last night. Conditions are right on the lake that we're actually seeing a mirage of the Chicago skyline.
You can tell that it's a mirage because there is lots of distortion. The Willis Tower on the left is clearly elongated. And also, there are videos of this same view that show the buildings dancing around, changing shape, and even disappearing. Even though this is a mirage, the bottom parts of the buildings are clearly still obscured from view, just as we expect. If the Earth was flat, you could see the buildings on any clear day, not just rarely when the conditions are right for refraction. Flat Earthers use these rare events to try to prove the Earth is flat, but that makes no sense. It's called cherry picking, a favorite trick of all types of science deniers. You don't get to pick the anomalies that seem to agree with your views and ignore the common observations that don't, and still call yourself an honest investigator. That is intellectually dishonest. As I have shown, the horizon is all we really need to know that we live on a sphere. But there are other observations you can make yourself that all perfectly fit the heliocentric globe model when you understand it. It is a spinning and moving sphere. In this part, we will look to the stars. But first, to understand the shape and movements of the Earth, we need to understand how it works within the context of the solar system and the distant stars that surround it. The nature of the Earth, solar system, and stars took many centuries to figure out. The Greek mathematician Pythagoras was the first to propose that the Earth was a sphere in the 6th century BCE. So, flat earthers, you are only about 600 years behind the curve. Because we live on the surface of the Earth, we are limited to seeing it from our perspective. Or at least we were back then. So when our perspective is limited, scientists create conceptual models and test them against observations. If a model cannot explain all observations and experiments, you either modify the model until everything fits, or throw out the model and start over. The prevailing model in the Middle Ages was the geocentric model, with the spherical Earth at the center of everything, and the sun, moon, and stars revolving around us. And to the casual observer, from our perspective, that is what it looks like. But while the model explained many observations, it failed to adequately explain some of them. Most notably, the apparent retrograde motions of the planets. Copernicus solved that problem by realizing that the sun is the center of the system, not the Earth. And the heliocentric model still works to this day to perfectly explain all observations, measurements, and experiments. Also, the ultimate test of any scientific model is its ability to predict future events. Using the heliocentric model, we can accurately predict lunar and solar eclipses, conjunctions, planetary alignments, and many other phenomena, down to the minute or second. This is how real science works. No flat Earth model has ever been able to explain all astronomical observations, let alone make accurate predictions. I challenge any flat earther to use your model to predict the next lunar eclipse. So let's see how our view of the stars fits with the heliocentric model, and compare it to the flat Earth model. In the heliocentric model, the Earth spins on its axis once per day. The axis is tilted about 23.5 degrees, and that tilt constantly points in the same direction as the Earth revolves around the Sun once per year. This tilt is the cause of our seasons, and the seasonal variation in the length of daylight. The stars around us are very far away, but all the stars we see without powerful telescopes are circling the Milky Way galaxy with us, in the same direction and the same speed, so they are essentially stationary from our frame of reference. It is this backdrop of stationary stars we can look to understand the shape and movements of the Earth, as I will explain. In the Northern Hemisphere, we look at the stars and we see star formations we all recognize, such as the Big Dipper, the Little Dipper, and Cassiopeia. But in the Southern Hemisphere, these constellations cannot be seen at all, and different star formations are seen, such as the Southern Cross and Centaurus. And some constellations near the celestial equator, such as Orion, can be seen in both hemispheres. This makes perfect sense for the spherical Earth. Northern observers are looking generally upward toward the North Pole, and southern observers are looking generally downward toward the South Pole and seeing different stars. The curvature of the Earth is what blocks the stars of the other hemisphere from view. To illustrate, these blue arrows represent the direction an observer in the north views the stars in the sky. And the red arrows are the direction of the stars viewable by an observer in the south. They intersect in the middle, but you can see how the shape of the Earth limits our view of the opposite hemisphere. In contrast, on the flat Earth model, the north is the center, and the south is a ring around it. The stars would have to be arranged in a dome shape over the flat Earth. In this model, it makes no sense that people in the north cannot see the southern stars, and vice versa. And it is particularly absurd that people in the outer ring can all see the same southern stars, but not the northern stars at all. There should be nothing blocking their view of all the northern stars. Also, consider that on nights when the moon is visible, we all see the same moon running across the sky, everywhere on Earth, and we see the stars behind it. This works perfectly fine on the heliocentric model. But when you look north from the outer ring of the flat Earth model, there is no logical reason you would not see the northern stars behind the moon. The moon is supposedly close by and circling above near the equator. And you would be looking northward with the moon near the center of the sky. But somehow the northern stars can't be seen? This is an insurmountable failure of the flat Earth model. And it only gets worse for the flat Earth model. The nightly rotation of stars is perfectly explained by the Earth's rotation on its axis. Every night, we see the stars rise and set overhead. They move very slowly, but if you watch for half an hour or so, you will notice them change positions, moving from east to west. In the northern hemisphere, you will also notice the stars to the north rotate counterclockwise around a central point, called the celestial pole, very near a star called Polaris. You can easily see this yourself. Look for the Big Dipper, and the end of the dipper always points to Polaris, a relatively bright star. With patience, you can watch the Big Dipper and the other nearby stars rotate around Polaris each night. This phenomenon is a favorite subject of professional and amateur stargazers, and you can find many long-exposure photographs and time-lapses of it. In the southern hemisphere, when you look to the south, you also see stars rotate around a point. But they are different stars, and they rotate in the opposite direction, clockwise. There is a star named Sigma Octantis very near the southern celestial pole, but it is not a very bright star, so it is difficult to see. This apparent spinning of the stars around a north and south axis is perfectly explained by the heliocentric globe model, as the spherical Earth rotates on its axis and our view of the essentially stationary distant stars rotates. The distant stars to the north and south spin around a point because we are seeing them over the spinning axis of the Earth. Depending on how far north or south you are, some stars stay above the horizon all night long. These are called circumpolar stars. But they are completely different stars in the north and in the south. How would this work in the flat Earth model? Well, to put it simply, it couldn't. In any flat Earth model, the stars would have to be arranged in a semi-spherical dome over the flat circular Earth, and Polaris would have to be in the center, and that would seem to explain what we see in the north. But south of the equator, the outer concentric ring in the flat Earth model, now you have huge problems. When you look to the south, in South America, in southern Africa, or in Australia, you see the same clockwise spinning stars. Yet people in those three locations would be looking in three different directions when looking to the south. Yet somehow they see the same thing. Where could the southern celestial pole and the circumpolar stars be in this model? Are they in many places at once? No, it simply cannot work. Of course, not all three of these distant locations are all in nighttime at the same time, but two of them at a time are, and the celestial pole and circumpolar stars stay visible all night long and are always directly to the south. I know some of you are going to claim that it simply doesn't look like that in the south, and that all images of it are faked. I'm not asking you to take my word for it. You could go and see it for yourself. But I do recognize that it is not cheap or convenient to travel to the southern hemisphere if you live in the north, and I have never been there myself. But if you were to go, I am extremely confident you will see the southern constellations, such as the Southern Cross, and also you will see the stars rotating clockwise around the southern celestial pole. Why am I so sure? Independent confirmation. No scientific claim ever comes from a single observer or a single observation. Science demands that observations are independently confirmed. And in this day and age, you can easily get independent confirmation yourself by finding someone on social media that lives anywhere in the southern hemisphere and asking them what they see at night. Or find any number of independently produced videos of it on YouTube. Of course, people lie and videos can be faked, but if you pick people at random, there is no reason to think they are part of a conspiracy, especially if you don't tell them why you are asking. And the more independent, neutral sources you can find, the less likely it is that they are all wrong or lying. If the stars in the south did not actually appear the way they teach it in all the schools of the world, a great many people would have noticed it, as anyone in the entire hemisphere can look at the stars. There is no way to hide them. But no one, outside of a few flat earthers, have ever said the stars don't look right in the south. Nearly the entire population of the southern hemisphere would have to be in on a conspiracy, or somehow deluded, if the stars didn't actually appear, as people have been reporting for centuries. The Southern Cross is actually depicted on the national flags of 5 southern hemisphere countries: Australia, New Zealand, Brazil, Papua New Guinea, and Samoa. I'm not asking you to believe me. Either go there yourself or find multiple independent sources to tell you or show you what they see in the sky. Another thing we notice in the real world is that the stars that are near the celestial equator change throughout the seasons. We can see Orion in the winter. In spring, we see the sickle of Leo the lion. In summer, Scorpius dominates the equatorial sky. And the fall brings the great square of Pegasus into view. This is explained by the Earth's orbit around the sun. The night side of the Earth rotates around, and thus our nighttime view points outward to different stars. There is no valid explanation for this observation in the flat Earth model. And this brings up a subject that confuses some flat earthers. They say if the Earth orbits around the sun, why doesn't noon become midnight 6 months later? Why don't the day and night times reverse? The answer is that our system of measuring time already takes the orbit of the Earth around the sun into consideration automatically. Noon is when the sun is the highest in the sky, and the time from one noon to the next noon is divided into a 24-hour day. This is called a solar day. But because the Earth orbits around the sun about 1 degree every day, the Earth actually has to rotate a little bit more than 360 degrees for the sun to be directly overhead at the same place. A full 360-degree rotation in relation to the distant stars is actually a little bit shorter than 24 hours, about 23 hours and 56 minutes. This is called a sidereal day. So that's why noon doesn't become midnight 6 months later. And this orbit around the sun explains why the stars we see at night near the celestial equator change throughout the year. The night side of the Earth rotates around, revealing different stars. There's one more thing flat earthers complain about regarding our view of the stars that I want to address. They ask, why does Polaris, and all the other stars as well, remain in the same place from our perspective year after year if the Earth is rotating on its axis and on a 23.5 degree tilt, and also revolving around the sun, and also moving around the Milky Way galaxy. This is no problem at all when you understand it. The Earth's daily rotation on its axis accounts for the rotation we see in the sky and around the 2 celestial poles, as I've shown. And since Polaris is near the North Celestial Pole, it stays close to the same position. Also, as I already explained, all the stars we see with the naked eye, including Polaris, are revolving around the Milky Way with us, in the same direction and close to the same speed. So that will not cause the stars to change their relative position in our sky in the short term. Just like how other cars on a freeway moving with you seem to stand still. And one revolution around the Milky Way takes about 225 million years. So we are essentially moving in a straight line. With Earth's moving around the sun, the Earth's axis stays pointed in the same direction in relation to the stars. And since Polaris is so tremendously far away, our view of it does not change noticeably. We're going to need some simple trigonometry to demonstrate this, but I'll use an online triangle calculator to make it easy. The latest estimate for the distance to Polaris is 323 light-years. This is an unimaginable 1.8 quadrillion miles, or 1.8 thousand billion miles. Our trip around the sun is only about 186 million miles, which is a tiny fraction in comparison. So, if we form a triangle from Polaris to the Earth, and over to the location of the Earth 6 months later on the other side of the sun, we can calculate the distance that Polaris will seem to move from our perspective. The change in its viewing angle. This is called its parallax. When we plug in the distances of all three sides of the triangle into this triangle calculator, we find that the angle we view Polaris only changes by, are you ready? 0.0000566 degrees. There is just no way you are going to notice that. This is why Polaris and all the other stars maintain their visual position year after year. They are just so tremendously far away. So we see that just looking up at the stars provides further confirmation that the Earth is a spinning and moving sphere. When you understand what you are seeing, and you understand how it fits with the heliocentric model. The heliocentric model is the correct model because it perfectly explains all observations, experiments, and measurements. Not because some government agency or secret society says so. Science works by observation, independent confirmation, experimentation, testing, and making accurate predictions, never by authority. And science is really open to everyone. Go out and look at the stars yourself and test the models against what you see. No flat Earth model can even come close to properly explaining what we see in the stars, or any of the other observations I discussed.
Now, on that note, it seems obvious to me that the flat Earth theory resurgence is a psyop on the truther community. This is a distraction, you guys. This is very clearly a distraction. Now, I realize that the arguments for the flat Earth may be very compelling, which is why so many truthers are caught up in this thing, as well as myself. But all of this is circumstantial and does not prove a flat Earth. With no new evidence and no new science, I have no idea how this theory has gained such a resurgence. And it's also causing huge division amongst the truther community. It has some very good truthers preoccupied and distracted, with once again no evidence, no new evidence, and no new science, just old arguments. Now, for the record, I don't necessarily believe in the current cosmological models, but I don't believe the Earth is flat either. I think it's round, and I think in this video I'm going to prove it to you. Okay, so the primary argument that I have against the flat Earth is this. I live in Vancouver, Canada, and when it is winter here, it is summer in the southern hemisphere. Now, I know this for sure because I have friends who live in Australia and New Zealand, and this is what they tell me directly. This really is well known to anybody who travels or known anybody from the southern hemisphere. Also, in Antarctica during the summer months, they have 24 hours of sunlight. This is not possible on the flat Earth model. Now, this graph shows the hours of sunlight shows world cities in the hours of sunlight at the winter solstice. That is December 22nd. Now, I live in Vancouver, Canada, and I can attest to these times. When I go to work at 7 a.m., it's dark for an hour before the sun comes up. And when I get home after 4, it's either dark or getting dark. I also have a Facebook friend who lives near Sydney, Australia, and he can attest to the long 14.5 hours of sunlight during their summer. Once again, this is just not possible on a flat Earth. I don't understand why more flat earthers don't see this. Not one of them on YouTube that I have brought this information to even acknowledge I exist. Some claim this as divine revelation even. That is also a mistake. So if we have the sun moving around the flat earth, and this is the UN flag, and one of the reasons people believe the world is flat, and they are showing it to us in our faces, then the sun would have to be moving a lot faster in these outer rings than it would be in these inner rings. This is not possible. The sun does not change speed during the year, you guys. Also, you would see totally different stars from South America to Australia. You would see different stars in this direction than you would in this direction. But this is not the case. What you see is the same stars rotating around a central point. Okay? And that's only possible on a round Earth. In addition to this, there have been many documentaries showing 24 hours of sunlight for months in Antarctica. Frozen Planet. This is an amazing documentary with some of the most amazing wildlife footage I've ever seen. This series also shows when it's summer in the southern hemisphere, they have months of sunlight for 24 hours a day in Antarctica. This is only possible on a round planet, round Earth, guys. Antarctica, a year on ice. This is an interesting documentary they made just last year in 2014 about a research town in Antarctica. And as the title implies, they spend a year there showing months of summer with 24-hour days of light in the Antarctic summer and months of 24-hour darkness in the Antarctic winter, just like we see on the North Pole. This is only possible on a round Earth, guys. Now, Planet Earth. This is a now famous series that shows wildlife in their own environments from pole to pole. This series shows 24 hours of winter and summer at both poles. Now, this really is the clincher. This is what the South Pole looks like from the Anglo-Australian Observatory in southern Australia. This is also what you see from South Africa and from South America. This shows all the stars spinning around a fixed point in the sky. This too could only happen on a round Earth. Okay, now I realize that the BBC is the mainstream media and they are the truther's enemy. But with the information from my friends in Australia and New Zealand, in addition to the stars rotating around a central point in the southern hemisphere, as well as these documentary films, the obvious conclusion is that the Earth is round. Now, as far as the compelling arguments for the flat Earth, this is the one I find most compelling. Okay, this is a picture of the Toronto skyline from 40 miles away. Theoretically, you should not be able to see this as it should be well below the horizon. It is photos like this that hooked me into many hours of study on the flat Earth. Now, after much study, I have found that this is explainable by light refracting in our atmosphere. Refraction, according to dictionary.com, is defined as the change of direction of a ray of light, sound, or heat, or the like, in passing obliquely from one medium into another, in which its wave velocity is different. And seeing as our atmosphere is filled with gases and vapors and particles that light passes through and refracts off of, this is how light can bend in our atmosphere. Okay? This is because long red wavelengths refract less than shorter blue wavelengths, and because every wave or particle of light carry the full spectrum from red to blue, the wave bends in the atmosphere. This is especially pronounced or exaggerated when looking over water, where the air just above the water is denser and cooler, as well as moister. This bends the light even more than if it were over land. Now, pretty much every picture I've seen flat earthers call evidence is over water. Here we have a diagram of sound waves bending over water. Now, light, water, sound, and heat are all waves and interact the same. This is a measurable and proven fact. Light bends in our atmosphere, you guys. Now, we've all seen this refraction of light in our atmosphere I'm sure, multiple times in our lives. The rainbow is the perfect example of this. This is light bending / refracting in our atmosphere. Do some research on refraction, flat earthers out there. This explains why we can see distances well below the horizon. Okay, guys, now there are those who say that NASA is filled with Luciferian occultist Freemasons who lie to us consistently and show us fake pictures of a round Earth. Therefore, the Earth must be flat. Okay, first of all, I agree. They show us fake pictures consistently, like this one called the Blue Marble, with North America shown completely out of proportion and photoshopped cloud formations. If you do some research on this picture, you will find this. And yes, I agree that NASA as well as other American organizations, were seeded with Nazi scientists from Hitler's Germany. This operation was called Operation Paperclip. From 1945 to 1955, now declassified Operation Paperclip granted almost 1,000 Nazi scientists, that many of which were involved with human experimentation and other war crimes in the concentration camps, ended up at the CIA, NASA, and other American organizations. As already stated, this is declassified information and available to anybody who has an internet connection. So yes, NASA lies. So yes, NASA is an evil group of Luciferians that lie continuous to us. This does not make the Earth flat, and it's quite an assumption to make quite a leap. And just to note, you guys, the flat Earth theory is a lot older than NASA. Another huge argument I have against the flat Earth is this. I personally am and have been since a child a stargazer and a bit of an amateur astronomer. I have spent literally hundreds of hours looking and wondering at the sky and cosmos. This is a picture much like my own telescope. It's computerized and will auto-track objects. It has multiple lenses for different magnifications, filters for viewing the sun and eclipses, and is generally just a good beginner scope. Now, this telescope, along with multiple pairs of sky-gazing specific binoculars I also possess, have allowed me to see and marvel at the sky and objects in the heavens much closer than with the naked eye. I have personally viewed multiple planets myself, as well as the sun, the moon, and other stars. Now, it's clear to me that all these celestial bodies are spheres. These pictures of both Saturn and Mars show definite spheres. The rings encircling Saturn, as well as different views of Mars at different times of the year showing ice at both poles, reveal without a doubt that these planets are spheres. Now, the moon, which is much closer and visible to the naked eye, is also clearly a sphere. The shadows created at the lighted and dark area of the moon, shadowed sections, as well as the crater shadows, reveal an orb. My argument is this. My personal observations, not NASA's, show the planets, the moon, the sun, are all spheres, you guys. And with the exception of the moon, they all rotate. So why would a God of order and reason, one of infinite wisdom and understanding, create the rest of the heavens one way and the earth another? In my personal opinion, this is not reasonable, this is not logical, and this is above all not efficient. Now the God I have come to know is reasonable, is logic, and is efficient. Infinitely so. Okay, now there are many people out there who say the Bible teaches a flat earth. This is simply not true. And with a bit of study into the original languages, we will see the Bible actually teaches a round earth. The scriptures most quoted by flat earthers are the ones that speak of the earth being set upon pillars, as well as those that speak of the earth having four corners. Let's start with the argument in scripture that deals with the four corners of the earth. Okay, so the four corners of the earth are mentioned in Ezekiel 7:2, Isaiah 11:12, Job 37:3, as well as Job 38:13, just to name a few. Okay? Now the Hebrew word used in all these scriptures is kanaf, meaning wings or extremities. Therefore, the proper interpretation of this passage is the extremities or furthest wings of the earth. We certainly don't see the earth as having wings. Why would we think it has corners? Now when you couple this with the passage from Isaiah 40:22 that states God himself sits on the circle of the earth and the inhabitants are like grasshoppers, and goes on to state that God stretches out the heaven as a curtain and spreadeth them out as a tent to dwell in. This will be of more importance later when I discuss the firmament, which is simply the atmosphere we live in. But for now, Isaiah, with the inspiration of the Holy Spirit, calls the earth a circle. And seeing as the Hebrews had no word for sphere, the earth must be round. Okay? Now this is confirmed in Job 26:10, where it states that God has inscribed a circle on the surface of the waters at the boundary of light and darkness. This means that the shadow between daylight and darkness is curved on the earth. This matches what we see on the earth and is only possible with a round earth, guys. Another common argument by flat earthers is that the Bible teaches that the earth is on pillars. Yes, the Bible speaks about the pillars of the earth in many places. Job 9:6, Psalm 75:3, and Samuel 2:8, just to name a few. And while the Hebrew words in these passages actually vary, they all literally mean pillar, column, or even molten pillar. Now it is clear to me that this is a metaphor, you guys. Only a metaphor. Kind of like saying so-and-so is a pillar of the community, or the Bible is the pillar of truth. Some believe the pillars of the earth are the power and providence of God. 1 Timothy 3:15 says that the church of the living God is the pillar and ground of truth. Clearly this is a metaphor, you guys. And when you add the scripture from Job 26:7, where God says he stretches the north over empty space and hangs the earth on nothing, and when you look at this word, it actually means nothing. It's clear that the earth is not on literal pillars. It's a metaphor. Metaphors are used throughout the Bible. Okay, the firmament, guys. Now there are those who believe that the firmament is a hard dome above the flat earth. But another look at the Genesis account and the original tongues will show that the firmament is the expanse of the atmosphere and not a hard dome covering a flat earth. In this next section of this video, we will have a look at the Genesis creation account and the original language, and I will show you exactly what the firmament is. Okay, the Genesis creation account. Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now, the word for created here is bara. Now, I realize it only says choose here, but when you do a study on this word, bara implies absolute creation, from start to finish. That is to say, God created everything in the universe at this time. Bara implies perfect and complete creation out of nothing. Genesis 1:2 goes on to say, and the earth was without form and void. Now the word was here is the Hebrew word hayah, meaning became. So after God had created the universe perfectly, the earth became without form and void. Now this is beyond the study of the flat earth, but many scholars believe that something happened in between verse 1 and verse 2. This is called the gap theory and the subject of a whole other video. Okay? Genesis goes on to say, and darkness was on the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the surface of the waters. So, what we are being shown here is darkness covering the earth and the Spirit of God moving, or more accurately interpreted, brooding over the surface of the waters like a hen over her eggs. Now, as far as a young earth is understood scientifically, at this time we see the first single-celled life in the early oceans, as well as an early gaseous atmosphere that scientists believed gassed out from the earth itself. So picture this, if you will. We have an early earth with oceans present and a thick, dark cloud of gases and vapors spewing from the interior of the earth and covering the whole earth completely. We also have the Spirit of God, who is God, brooding over the surface of the water, possibly at work in the creation of the first simple life. Now, as far as these early oceans and early atmosphere are implied here, this is backed up in Job 38:8 and 9, where God speaking very firmly to Job, saying to him, where were you when I created this all, Job? Or who shut up the sea with doors when it brake forth as if issued out of the womb? When I made the cloud the garment thereof, and thick darkness swaddling band thereof. This passage matches Genesis 1:2 perfectly and explains what the darkness was. It was a thick, dark cloud that was encompassing the entire planet of gases and vapor, churning above the oceans below. Okay, Genesis 1:3-5 say, and God said, let there be light, and there was light. And God saw the light, and that it was good. And God divided the light from the darkness. And God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And the evening and the morning were the first day. So in the interest of time, I'm going to tell you what I see happening in this passage. It was at the moment when God said, let there be light, that he began to disperse this dark cloud of gases to allow light on the earth. This not only allowed light on the surface of the oceans, but gave the earth a day and night cycle, as light from the sun, already created earlier on the first day when God created bara, the heavens and the earth. Now I realize we have been taught that God created the sun, the moon, and the stars on the fourth day of creation, but if you bear with me, I will show you that this is not exactly true. Just bear with me, okay guys? I will explain this. Now Genesis 1, 6 through 8 goes on to say, "And God said, Let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters. And God made the firmament, and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters above the firmament. And it was so. And God called the firmament heaven, and the evening and the morning were the second day." Okay, so the word for made here is not bara, like we seen in Genesis chapter 1:1, implying original creation. The word here is asa, and implies using existing materials to create something new. A new appointment or purpose or accomplishment is what asa implies and means. The word firmament here is the Hebrew word rakia, and although it can be interpreted as a hard beaten out thing, as flat earthers like to use to describe a hard dome over the earth, it is more accurately interpreted as expanse, or the expanse of heaven. Now the word used for heaven here is shamayim, or shamayim. I'm not exactly sure how that's pronounced, but it simply means sky or heaven. So now with this further expansion on the original tongues, we see that the firmament is not a hard dome. What we see God actually saying with a fresh interpretation is this: "Let there be an expanse in the midst of the waters." And God appointed or accomplished the expanse of heaven, dividing the waters under the firmament, oceans, from the waters above, clouds. And God called the expanse sky. In other words, God was further expanding the atmosphere for the life that God was going to create next. This also re-established a thick cloud greenhouse covering high above, similar to what we saw in Genesis 1:2. Now, in the interest of time, and because the formation of dry land is not important in regards to the firmament, I will skip day 3 completely. Now in Genesis 1:14-19, God said, "Let there be lights in the firmament of heaven, to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons, and for days and for years, and let them be for light in the firmament of the heaven, to give light upon the earth." And it was so. And God made 2 great lights, the greater to rule the day, and the lesser to rule the night. He made the stars also, and God set them in the firmament of the heavens, to give light upon the earth, and to rule over the day and over the night. And God divided the light from the darkness, and saw that it was good. And the evening and the morning were the 4th day. Okay, the word used for made here, again, is asa, implying an appointment, or appointing, or in this case, reappointing the sun, the moon, and the stars to give light on the earth. Indeed, the sun, the moon, and the stars were not created new, bara, but appointed, asa, to give light on the earth, to give signs, and to give seasons at this time. It is crucial to understand that it is also during this time that God is again dispersing the thick greenhouse of cloud covering, reformed on day 2 when God made the firmament/atmosphere. This also must have been added to on the 3rd day, when major volcanism must have occurred in order to form dry land out of the oceans. But now God is again dispersing this cloud cover for the purpose of allowing light into the atmosphere. So the sun, the moon, and the stars were not created at this time, as we have already seen. They were created bara on the 1st day, but now God is clearing the skies in the atmosphere to allow them to shine upon the earth again. It is also clear that the sun, the moon, and the stars are not in the firmament atmosphere, but rather in space. This is further confirmed on the fifth day of creation when God created bara, the birds to fly in the expanse of heaven. Now clearly where the birds fly, the sun, the moon, and the stars are not. Therefore the sun, the moon, and the stars are in another part of the heaven, you guys, and not in the firmament, although they do produce light in the firmament, okay? It should be noted that most biblical scholars believe the Bible teaches three heavens, okay? The atmosphere, space, and heaven, the abode of God. Paul referred to this as the third heaven. So, in conclusion, guys, the firmament is not a hard dome over the earth. It is the atmosphere we live in. Okay? Now I encourage all of you to study the Bible in this way. Original tongues open up the interpretation vastly and give new accuracy to the scripture. Okay guys, so in conclusion, I have already stated that I believe this flat earth resurgence is a psyop and a distraction on the truther community. So what could we be being distracted from? Well, when you consider that many flat earthers believe the firmament is a hard dome that contains the sun, the moon, and the stars, and space itself does not actually exist, well, how about what is in or what could be in space? For example, the rod of God, quote, technology. This is a technology that shoots a tungsten rod from space at a target on the Earth and causes a huge explosion, basically. And when you consider the recent explosion or explosions in China that many believe may have been caused by such a weapon, this may be just one thing we are being distracted from. Have a look at this G.I. Joe retaliation clip where they show this type of weapon being used.
Zeus satellite 1A approaching London. Ordnance live and loaded.
Then I'm going to show you the crater created at the first Chinese explosion, and you can draw your own conclusion.
Gravity does the rest. Observe.
Satellite 1A, we have remote launch authorization. 3, 2, 1, drop.
A rod touches down 8 times faster than a bullet, and with a force significantly greater than a nuclear warhead. None of the fallout. All of the fun.
You will have to answer for this to your Congress, your courts. Correction. They will have to answer to.
So here is the lake created at the first explosion at Tianjin, China. Notice the fracturing around the edges. Does this really look like a chemical explosion to you? Or does this look like an impact? How could this giant lake be created where the chemical plant was? And did you know that this was mere blocks away from the world's most powerful supercomputer? Is somebody sending somebody a message?
The earth is a globe, the earth is not flat. But let me just start out by saying this. None of them prove that the earth is flat whatsoever. And that's why I printed out a list. And these are the same verses that all these other, flat earthers will come at you with. And it's nonsense. And let me just start out with just a list of just irrelevant verses that are Colossians 2:8. Beware lest any man spoil you through philosophy and vain deceit, after the tradition of men, after the rudiments of the world, and not after Christ. What does that have to do with the flat earth? Absolutely nothing. And I have a whole page of verses like that they quote as part of their 75 verses that prove a flat earth. So the point is that they're just coming at you with, it's sort of like when atheists will say, oh, the Bible's filled with contradictions. Oh, there's just a mountain of contradictions. But then when you look at each one, they fall apart. 1 Timothy 6:20. O Timothy, keep that which is committed to thy trust, avoiding profane and vain babblings and opposition of science falsely so called. 1 Corinthians 3:19, for the wisdom of this world is foolishness with God, for it is written, he taketh the wise in their own craftiness. You say, well, why are you reading, Pastor Anderson, these irrelevant verses that have nothing to do with the flat earth? Well, you tell me. I'm just debunking that supposedly prove that it's flat. And this just goes to show that the guy's lying right away, because these verses don't prove that the earth is flat. Exodus 20 verse 4, thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image, or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water of the earth. I am the Lord, that is my name, and my glory will I not give to another, neither my praise to graven images. Matthew 24:24, for there shall rise false Christs and false prophets, and shall show great signs and wonders, insomuch that if it were possible, they shall deceive the very elect. 2 Thessalonians 2:3, let no man deceive you by any means, for that day shall not come, except there come a falling away first, and that man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition. But first I have to read through all these irrelevant verses before I can even get into the verses that actually would be twisted to say that the earth is flat. But Ephesians 5 verse 6, let no man deceive you with vain words, for because of these things cometh the wrath of God upon the children of disobedience. Psalm 147:5, great is our Lord, and of great power, his understanding is infinite. Luke 18:17, verily I say unto you, whosoever shall not receive the kingdom of God as a little child shall in no wise enter therein. Now tell me, did any of those verses say anything about the earth being flat? Well, these don't really prove that, the earth's flat, but they at least prove geocentricity. So he's kind of moving the goalposts, talking about a different subject. But here's what's funny about that. If you actually look up these verses about the sun moving, none of them say, the sun moved. This is what they actually say. They say the sun goes up and the sun goes down, is what they talk about. Okay. Well, here's the thing. If you look at the model that the flat earthers show you of the sunrise and sunset, the sun is not literally going up and going down, is it? On their model, the sun just kind of floats around in a circle. So if they were actually taking these verses literally as they claim, then, where's the sun going up and going down? Obviously, the sun going up and going down is from the viewpoint of the person who's standing on the earth. It appears to go up and appears to go down. And even according to their own model, it's not literally going up and down. Okay, so let's move on. Is with Isaiah 11 verse 12. And he shall set up an ensign for the nations, and shall assemble the outcasts of Israel, and gather together the dispersed of Judah from the four corners of the earth. So he says, see, the earth has corners. That proves that it's flat. Well, here's what's funny about that. It says that God is going to gather the dispersed of Judah from the four corners of the earth. Now, according to the flat earthers, this is what the corners look like, okay? So they pull out this model where the earth is sort of like a chips and dips bowl. It's this round earth, but that it has this square around it. And then it has these angels on the four corners. Another verse he brings up is Revelation 7:1. And after these things I saw four angels standing on the four corners of the earth, holding the four winds of the earth, that the wind should not blow on the earth, nor on the sea, nor on any tree. So it shows them here, these angels on the four corners, saying, see, this is what the Bible is talking about. But here's the problem with that. If Isaiah 11 verse 12 is saying that he's going to gather the dispersed of Judah from the four corners of the earth, then that would mean that Jews would have to be living on those corners, okay? So you see their little ice ring that they always talk about, the Antarctica ice ring. So I guess the Jews somehow got beyond the ice ring and are just hanging out on those corners on the edges. Now that doesn't make any sense, does it? Because according to these flat earthers, that corner is uninhabited because no one can get past the ice ring of supposed Antarctica. And I feel like an idiot even talking about this, but honestly, somebody has to respond to this stuff because there's all these videos all over the internet claiming that the Bible teaches that the earth is flat. So, gathering the dispersed of Judah from the four corners of the earth, well, that picture goes out the window then, doesn't it? Because there wouldn't be any Jews hanging out on those four corners. They'll also bring out Revelation 20, verse 8. He should go out to deceive the nations which are in the four quarters of the earth. So, again, the nations are living in those corners. That doesn't make any sense. Here's the answer. Listen to this. Leviticus 19:27 says this: "You shall not round the corners of your head, neither shalt thou mar the corners of thy beard." Now, is your head flat? Is your head a flat disc? Absolutely not. Yet the Bible says not to round the corners of your head. So here's my question. If your head can have corners, isn't it possible that the earth could have corners as well? See, it's just a misunderstanding of the word corner. The word corner not only refers to, a square's sharp edges. The word corner actually can also mean region or quadrant. Okay? So that makes sense not to mar the corners of your head. It's talking about different parts of your head, and the four corners of the earth are talking about different parts of the earth, different quadrants of the earth. That's why it says in Revelation 28, the four quarters of the earth instead of corners of the earth, because it's just referring to a section or quadrant of a sphere, sort of like your head, which is more like a sphere than a flat disc. At least mine is. Let's move on to the next proof that they give. 1 Chronicles 16:30 says this: "Fear before him all the earth. The world also shall be stable, that it be not moved." Now, they misinterpret this verse to say that the earth is not moving. And they call this the still earth. The Bible teaches a still earth. But here's the thing. That verse does not say that the earth is not moving. It says that the earth shall be stable, that it be not moved. Now, that it be not moved is talking about being moved by an outside force. Let me prove it to you. Let me just keep reading. Psalm 96 verse 10 is another verse they use for this. "Say among the heathen that the Lord reigneth. The world also shall be established, that it shall not be moved. He shall judge the people righteously." Psalm 93:1, "The Lord reigneth, he is clothed with majesty. The Lord is clothed with strength, wherewith he hath girded himself. The world also is established, that it cannot be moved." So they say that these verses are saying that the earth is not moving, but that's not what they say. It says that the earth shall not be moved. Now, let me give you some other Bible verses. Let's compare Scripture with Scripture. Psalm 10, verse 6. "He hath said in his heart, I shall not be moved, for I shall never be in adversity." Psalm 15:5. "He that putteth not out his money to usury, nor taketh reward against the innocent, he that doeth these things shall never be moved." Now again, first of all, even if the Bible did say that the earth didn't move, that would still not prove that the earth is flat. That would just prove geocentricity, which is also false. But again, they're moving the goalpost. They're claiming that things that prove a flat earth. The earth not moving doesn't prove that, number one. But number two, it says the earth shall not be moved. But then what about when David said, "I shall not be moved"? What about when the Bible says that the man who puts out his money to usury shall not be moved? What about when the Bible says in Psalm 21:7, "For the king trusteth in the Lord, and through the mercy of the Most High, he shall not be moved"? Is that saying that that man is just stationary and never moves? I mean, if I as a believer shall not be moved, according to all these verses, Psalm 62:2, "He only is my rock and my salvation. He is my defense. I shall not be greatly moved. He only is my rock and my salvation. He's my defense. I shall not be moved." Psalm 66:9, "Which holdeth our soul in life, and suffereth not our feet to be moved." Does that say that Christians' feet never move? We're just frozen? I mean, maybe we're stationary and the whole universe is moving around us. I mean, that's ridiculous. But they're using the exact same verses to claim that the earth doesn't move, of people that shall not be moved. The earth shall not be moved. It's talking about being acted upon by an outside force. It's stable in its orbit. Okay? It is established in its path. Just as we as Christians are established, are stable in our path, and shall not be moved. It says that even more than about the earth. Psalm 112 verse 6, surely he shall not be moved forever. The righteous shall be in everlasting remembrance. Psalm 121 verse 3, he will not suffer thy foot to be moved. He that keepeth thee will not slumber. Proverbs 12:3, a man shall not be established by wickedness, but the root of the righteous shall not be moved. I suppose these flat earthers who want to just take this overly literal view of poetic verses, when it says the root of the righteous shall not be moved, I guess they would say that, we all have physical roots like tree roots that never move. I mean, that's what it says. The root of the righteous shall not be moved. Let's move on. So we've shown that the earth not being moved does not prove that the earth isn't moving. It's talking about not being moved by something else, acted upon by an outside force. Let's move on. The next point that they make is about the ends of the earth. Job 37:3, he directeth it unto the whole heaven, and his lightning unto the ends of the earth. Daniel 4:11, the tree grew and was strong, and the height thereof reached unto heaven, and the sight thereof to the end of all the earth. Proverbs 30 verse 4, who hath ascended up into heaven or descended? Who hath gathered the wind in his fist? Who hath bound the waters in a garment? Who hath established all the ends of the earth? What is his name, and what is his son's name, if thou canst tell? Jeremiah 16:19. O Lord, my strength and my fortress and my refuge in the day of affliction. The Gentiles shall come unto thee from the ends of the earth, and shall say, surely our fathers have inherited lies, vanity, and things wherein there is no profit. Now again, if they're going to say that the ends of the earth is somehow the edges of a flat earth, well, the Bible says that the Gentiles shall come from the ends of the earth. So then Gentiles would have to be coming from Antarctica, according to them. Or Gentiles would have to be coming from these uninhabited corners, according to them. And that makes no sense. Honestly, what they're missing here on this ends of the earth thing is that the Bible defines the earth as dry land, and that's usually how it's used in the Bible. So when the Bible says the word earth, it's usually not talking about the planet Earth. It's actually talking about the dry land. Because, for example, in Genesis 1 verse 9, it says, and God said, let the waters under the heaven be gathered together unto one place, and let the dry land appear, and it was so. And God called the dry land earth, and the gathering together of the waters called he seas, and God saw that it was good. So the earth is in contrast to the seas. The earth is the dry land, the seas are the water. So to sit there and say the ends of the earth proves that the earth is a disc or a square that has edges is ridiculous, because of the fact that it talks about God bringing the Gentiles from the ends of the earth. Now, it makes more sense that God is talking about the dry land, the ends of the dry land, like where the dry land stops and the sea begins. Those would be the ends of the earth. That's why he says in Psalm 67:7, God shall bless us, and all the ends of the earth shall fear him. So people would have to be living at the ends of the earth for these verses to be true, which is the case because the end of the earth is where the sea begins. He called the dry land earth, and the gathering together of the water calls he seas. It says in Isaiah 41:5, the isles saw it and feared. The ends of the earth were afraid, drew near, and came. And I could go on and on with that point. It's just a misunderstanding that the earth is the dry land, not the planet. And that's where the flat earthers make a lot of mistakes, in fact, not understanding that simple point. Okay, let's move on to the pillars of the earth. 1 Samuel chapter 2, verse 8, he raiseth up the poor out of the dust, and lifteth up the beggar from the dunghill, to set them among princes, and to make them inherit the throne of glory. For the pillars of the earth are the Lord's, and he hath set the world upon them. Now, first of all, let me just point out the context of this passage. This is not God telling us about the nature of the universe or about the earth and its situation. This is actually Hannah praying to God. This is in 1 Samuel chapter 2, where Hannah is praying for God to give her a child, and basically she's thanking God that he's answered her prayer. So she's praying and says this statement about the pillars of the earth are the Lord's, and he has set the world upon them. So it's kind of funny that I guess God would give us that truth in some woman's prayer. It's not even God talking. And people in the Bible have been known to make mistakes, number one. But not only that, listen to this. Job 9 verse 6. which shaketh the earth out of her place, and the pillars thereof tremble. Okay, so when we talk about shaking the earth out of his place and the pillars thereof trembling, again, we're talking about the dry land. Because remember, we already looked at a bunch of verses that talk about the earth not being moved, the earth being stable, in the sense of the planet is stable. But earth referring to the dry land on tectonic plates, there are, of course, earthquakes where the earth is shaken out of its place and the pillars thereof tremble, showing that the pillars of the earth are basically pillars under the dry land. And I'm going to go into that in a moment with more scripture. But listen to this, Psalm 75, verse 3. The earth and all the inhabitants thereof are dissolved. I bear up the pillars of it, Selah. So they're using this verse to show that the Bible is teaching that the earth is literally this flat disk sitting upon pillars. Well, no, actually the Bible says that God hangeth the earth upon nothing. And that's actually the truth. So the Bible is scientifically accurate that the earth is hanging on nothing. But they're saying, well, no, this is literal pillars holding up a flat disk of an earth. This proves the earth's flat. But here's the problem with that. It says in Psalm 75:3, the earth and all the inhabitants thereof are dissolved. I bear up the pillars of it. Selah. So if you're going to take this verse literally, then you'd be saying that Asaph, the writer of the psalm, is under those pillars lifting them up, because he said, I bear up the pillars of it. So obviously this is poetic, because a human being can't lift up the entire earth on pillars, can he? No, that's ridiculous. So it's obviously poetic, number one. So these verses about the pillars of the earth are clearly poetic, clearly not literal. But there is some literal explanation to this anyway, if you want to talk about pillars being under the dry land or under the earth. Because listen to this from Jonah chapter 2, verse 2. And said, I cried by reason of mine affliction unto the Lord. He heard me. Out of the belly of hell cried I, and thou heardest my voice. So Jonah is talking about crying out of the belly of hell. And then he says in Jonah 2, verse 6, I went down to the bottoms of the mountains. The earth with her bars was about me forever. Yet hast thou brought up my life from corruption, O Lord my God. So notice Jonah says that the earth with her bars was about him forever. Well, bars and pillars are both synonymous. They're both, rods of metal, basically. So in this scripture, it says the earth with her bars was about me forever. So speaking from hell, and obviously Jonah was not literally in hell. Jonah was in the whale's belly, but it's prophetic where the Son of Man would be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth out of the belly of hell. Okay. Well, according to the Bible, hell is in the lower parts of the earth, or the heart of the earth. Okay. So if the earth looks like this, which we know that it does, on the inside of this, it's all fire and brimstone, which makes perfect sense because the Bible says that hell is in the heart of the earth. Okay. Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the whale's belly. Son of Man, Jesus Christ, would be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. Okay. Well, think about it. If you were in the heart of the earth, if you were in hell, then you could say the earth with her bars was about me forever. What's about mean? Around me. So that proves that the earth is a sphere anyway, because if you're in hell, the earth is all around you. The earth with her bars was about me forever when he's down below the bottoms of the mountains, etc. So, again, the bars, the pillars, are just basically foundational structure underneath the crust of the earth, or, underneath the bedrock where no man has ever gone before, of course, because we've never even reached the mantle as human beings. So basically, sort of like concrete has rebar in it, there's obviously some kind of, rods or bars down below us in the earth. Okay, but here's the thing. It's either that or all of these are just figurative, since he talks about lifting up the pillars. So there are plenty of explanations for that, besides, proving beyond any shadow of a doubt that the earth is flat. Okay, so let's move on. Isaiah 24, verse 18, and it shall come to pass that he who fleeth from the noise of the fear shall fall into the pit, and he that cometh up out of the midst of the pit shall be taken in the snare. For the windows from on high are open, and the foundations of the earth do shake. Again, the foundations of the earth shaking This has to do with plate tectonics. This has to do with an earthquake. And this has to do with them misunderstanding that the earth is referring to the dry land. It's not referring to the entire planet as a whole shaking. It's talking about the earth, the ground, the dirt shaking. Okay? But they're also making a point here of, well, you know, the windows of heaven, the windows from on high. That proves the earth's flat. Well, how does that prove that the earth's... I don't get it. The window... Well, because the dome and the firmament and all this... Look, again, moving the goalpost. Okay? They want to talk about something that's going on in the sky as proving that the earth is flat. First of all, and let me just read the firmament verse while I'm on that subject. Genesis 1, 6 through 8. And God said, let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters. And God made the firmament, and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament, and it was so. And God called the firmament heaven, and the evening and the morning were the second day. So they'll say, well, see, that proves the earth's flat. Of course, that has nothing to do with the earth being flat. But it goes with their whole model of, oh, well, the earth's flat and it has this dome above it called the firmament, this ice dome or water dome or whatever. But this is false. When the Bible says, let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters that divides the waters from the waters, and dividing the waters under the firmament from the waters above the firmament, this is simply dividing the water that's on this earth, the water that, you know, is in the seas and the lakes and the rivers, referring to that being separated from the water that is in the atmosphere. You know, when we have clouds above us, that's water up there, okay? That's moisture up there. That's H2O. So the waters above the firmament are the waters that are up in the atmosphere in the form of clouds. That's all. The firmament is called heaven. Well, what does the Bible define heaven as? The sky, okay? Now, there are multiple heavens. The Bible talks about in 2 Corinthians chapter 12 being caught up to the third heaven. You know, because there's the heaven as in the sky. There's the heaven as in, you know, space in a sense with the stars and the moon and the sun in it. That's also called heaven. And then there's heaven, the place where God lives. That's why it's called the third heaven, because there are three heavens. Okay, so there are also three firmaments. Okay, there's the firmament in the sense of the sky, in the sense of outer space, and in the sense of where God lives. Okay, so people just don't understand the word firmament because it's a word that we don't use in our modern vernacular whatsoever. But it's these, basically it's these layers as you go outward is what the firmament is. So you have a layer of water where you're underwater, then you have a layer of atmosphere, and then you have water that's in the atmosphere, then you have another layer of outer space, and then you have where God lives. So again, this thing of the firmament being an ice dome, the Bible doesn't teach that. The Bible just says there are waters above the firmament. Oh, wow. It's talking about clouds in the sky. Isaiah 13:13. Therefore I will shake the heavens, and the earth shall remove out of her place in the wrath of the Lord of hosts and in the day of his fierce anger. This is a verse that they bring up, but this actually proves my point. When it says the earth shall remove out of her place, again, they're the ones who showed all these verses that the earth shall not be removed. The earth will be stable, that it shall not be moved. And also a verse said it shall not be removed. Why? Because that's talking about the whole earth. Whereas this verse, when it says the earth shall remove out of her place, is talking about an earthquake happening. If you get the context of Isaiah 13, it's an earthquake where the dry land is moving. The plate tectonics are moving. Isaiah 44:24, thus saith the Lord thy Redeemer, and he that formed thee from the womb, I am the Lord that maketh all things, that stretcheth forth the heavens alone, that spreadeth abroad the earth by myself. So again, they take this poetic language about stretching forth the heavens and spreading abroad the earth by himself, and they basically say, well, this proves that it's flat. Well, no, because if spreading the earth abroad by himself proves that the earth's flat, well, I mean, does that mean that the heaven is flat too? Because the heaven is also stretched out. So again, it doesn't make any sense. It's a double standard. They have the earth as some dome, but then, the heaven as a dome according to them, and then the earth as flat, even though it uses the same language about both being spread out or stretched out. And again, the mistake of not distinguishing the dry land from the entire planet. Psalm 18:9, he bowed the heavens also and came down, and darkness was under his feet. Again, in 2 Samuel 22:10, he bowed the heavens also and came down, and darkness was under his feet. He bowed the heavens. And then he looks up bow in the dictionary, how it means to bend something, like, bowing something. It's not bow, it's bow. Okay, he bowed them as in brought them down is what that actually means. But here's the context. Let me read you the whole passage in context. Psalm 18:7. Then the earth shook and trembled. The foundations also of the hills moved and were shaken because he was wroth. There went up a smoke out of his nostrils, and fire out of his mouth devoured. Coals were kindled by it. He bowed the heavens also and came down. And darkness was under his feet, and he rode upon a cherub and did fly. Yea, he did fly upon the wings of the wind. Now, this is not a verse about God creating the earth, if you didn't notice, because he says, well, he bowed the heavens. It's talking about when he created the earth, he bended it, and that's how he created it. No, this is talking about God coming down and bringing wrath and judgment, and he bowed the heavens at that time. Okay, it's not talking about God creating the earth or the heavens. And notice that it talks about, smoke coming out of his nostrils, him riding on a cherub and flying. He made darkness his secret place. This is clearly poetry. This is poetic. This is not literal. If you actually read the whole passage, that becomes obvious. At the brightness that was before him, the thick clouds passed, hailstones and coals of fire. The Lord also thundered in the heavens, and the highest gave his voice, hailstones and coals of fire. Yea, he sent out his arrows and scattered them, and shot out lightnings and discomfited them. Then the channels of waters were seen, and the foundations of the world were discovered at thy rebuke, O Lord, at the blast of the breath of thy nostrils. So again, clearly poetic, but again, it has nothing to do with bending the heavens. He bowed the heavens. He brought them down. And that has nothing to do with the earth being flat, just like how many other verses we've looked at. No, there's not a verse in the Bible that says the earth is flat, period. There's nothing even close to that. None of these verses prove that. Job 11 verse 8 is the next one that he brings up. It's as high as heaven. What canst thou do? Deeper than hell. What canst thou know? Again, that doesn't prove the earth is flat. Heaven is high. Heaven is up. And hell is down. That doesn't prove anything about the earth being flat, because no matter where you're standing on the earth, no matter where you're standing on the earth, hell is deep below you. Hell is down because the earth is round. So wherever you are, hell's down. Job 11 verse 9, the measure thereof is longer than the earth and broader than the sea. Again, the misunderstanding that earth is referring to the whole planet. Here, earth is referring to the dry land. That's why it's in contrast with the sea here. The measure thereof is longer than the earth and broader than the sea. Longer than the earth, broader than the sea. We're just talking about the length of the dry land. We're talking about measuring the dry land, measuring the sea. Job 26:10, he hath compassed the waters with bounds until the day and night come to an end. How does that prove a flat earth? It doesn't. Job 26:11, the pillars of heaven tremble and are astonished at his reproof. Again, so if the pillars of the earth are these literal pillars, then why say the pillars of heaven? Does it have literal pillars holding it up too? And Asaph standing under them, holding them? No. Job 38:4, where wast thou when I laid the foundations of the earth? Declare if thou hast understanding. Isaiah 48:13, mine hand also hath laid the foundation of the earth, and my right hand hath spanned the heavens. When I call unto them, they stand up together. So again, they say, well, the foundation of the earth proves flat. No, because again, the earth is the dry land, and it has foundation under it, the bedrock that's under it with the bars or rebar or whatever you want to call it. That's all that's saying. Let's move on. Or here's a verse too, Psalm 18:7. Then the earth shook and trembled. The foundations also of the hills moved and were shaken because he was wroth. Again, proving that the foundations of the earth are talking about the dry land, the plate tectonics moving, not the whole planet moving. Okay. Let's move on to Isaiah 66:1. Thus saith the Lord, the heaven is my throne, and the earth is my footstool. Where is the house that ye build unto me, and where is the place of my rest? Matthew 5:35, nor by the earth, for it is his footstool, neither by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great king. Acts 7:49, heaven is my throne, and earth is my footstool. What house will ye build me, saith the Lord, or what is the place of my rest? Well, you know what? The earth being God's footstool, that doesn't prove that it's flat. They'll show a picture of a footstool and say, see, footstools are shaped flat with, 4 legs, therefore that's how the earth is shaped. No, it just means that God put his foot there. That's all that means when it says the earth is his footstool. It's that simple. Okay, then they bring up the fact about the stars falling. Matthew 24:29, immediately after the tribulation of those days shall the sun be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light, and the stars shall fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens shall be shaken. Mark 13:25, and the stars of heaven shall fall, and the powers that are in heaven shall be shaken. Revelation 6:13, and the stars of heaven fell unto the earth, even as a fig tree casteth her untimely figs when she is shaken of a mighty wind. And they say, well, see right there, that proves that the earth's flat. How? The stars falling proves that the earth is flat? They say, well, that proves that the stars aren't as far away and as big as we've been told. Ergo, the earth is flat. Well, hold on a second. Let's say that the stars really were closer and smaller. That would not stop the earth from being a sphere, would it? So again, they claim that these verses prove a flat earth. They prove nothing of the kind. But not only that, this is not talking about the stars, what we know as stars, falling to the earth. This is talking about what we would know as a shooting star, which are also called shooting stars, which are basically meteors crashing to the earth. So again, this has to do with perception. Just like when the Bible talks about the sun going up and the sun going down, the sun's not literally going up and down, but that's how it looks to an observer. So John in Revelation is the observer, and he sees stars falling. Well, what is he seeing? Shooting stars. He's seeing meteors. Now, I've actually seen, obviously we've all seen shooting stars in the heavens, but I've actually seen a shooting star then, come into the atmosphere and burn up and hit the earth. A very small one, but it was a pretty amazing sight out in the desert to see that happen. And it was breathtaking. So obviously the Bible is talking about, when it talks about the stars falling, it's talking about meteors, a meteor shower upon the earth, causing all kinds of damage and cataclysm. And later on in the book of Revelation, after this happens, it talks about the stars still being in heaven. And it talks about how, for example, when the fourth trumpet sounds, that the third part of the stars are going to be darkened and stuff like that. So the stars are still in the sky after this. When it talks about the sun and moon being darkened and the stars falling, it's not talking about what we define as stars. It's talking about what we would know as shooting stars or meteors crashing into the earth. But even so, even if you say, well, I don't believe it, I think it's the real stars are going to fall. That has nothing to do with the shape of the earth, whether stars fall on it or not. So that's nonsense. The ancient Hebrew view of the universe, sure, but it was something like this or whatever. The ancient Hebrew view of the universe. But my question is, according to who is that the ancient Hebrew view? Some Christ-rejecting rabbi somewhere tell you that? What do I care what some Christ-rejecting Jew says is the ancient Hebrew view of the universe? Why don't we just go by what the Bible says? Oh yeah, because these verses don't really prove anything, so you have to invoke some weirdo Jew view of the universe that means nothing. But anyway, let's move on to the next actual Bible verse they bring up. Isaiah chapter 40, verse 22. It is he that sitteth upon the circle of the earth, and the inhabitants thereof are as grasshoppers, that stretcheth out the heavens as a curtain, and spreadeth them out as a tent to dwell in. So here we see the circle of the earth, and they say, well, see right there, it doesn't say sphere or ball or globe, it says the circle. Well, here's the thing about that. There's no such thing as a circle in real life, and if anybody took a geometry class, they would know that. Because a circle is a two-dimensional object, and there is no such thing in real life as a two-dimensional object. Every object in this world has 3 dimensions to it, period. Okay? So a circle is a theoretical shape. And the only way we can describe a circle is just man's perception. You see, this right here is not a circle. This is not called a compact circle. This isn't a CC. No, this is CD, a compact disc. Why? Because a disc is a 3-dimensional shape. If you look at it from this angle, it is a circle. But if you look at it from this angle, it has depth. It has a couple of millimeters of depth there. Okay, so a circle is a 2-dimensional object. So they'll pull up their, picture of the earth, whether it's, something like this, or whether it's something like this, and say, see, it's a circle. But hold on a second. All of these pictures are 3-dimensional objects, because they're not claiming that the earth has 0 depth. They're not claiming that because here's the thing, even if the earth is 1 inch thick, it's no longer a circle. And again, this is just ignorance of geometry. A circle is a 2-dimensional shape, the way they're defining a circle. the way a geometry book defines a circle. So again, if you look at something, you could describe it as a circle. Whether it's a globe, whether it's a cylinder, whether it's a cone. See, in order for a circle to exist in the three-dimensional world, it has to be either a disc or a cone, or it has to be a sphere, or it has to be a cylinder, okay, because those are all three-dimensional objects, okay? So the definition of a circle is a shape. This is the geometry definition of a circle. A two-dimensional shape where every point along the edge is equidistant from the center. That's the definition of a circle. Every point on the edge of the shape is equidistant to the center of the shape. That's how geometry defines a circle. So what's a three-dimensional circle? Well, if we were to take this, for example, the globe, and we were to take the center of the globe, every point on the outside of this globe is virtually equidistant to the center. So actually the best three-dimensional version of a circle is a sphere. So when the Bible says circle, it's not saying, well, it's not a sphere, it's a circle. What they actually mean is disc or cylinder, but it doesn't say disc or cylinder. It says circle. And so this is every bit as much of a circle as this is. These are both a circle in shape, because a circle is a two-dimensional description, and these are three-dimensional objects that derive from a circle. Isaiah chapter 22:18, where it uses the word ball, and say, well, see, Isaiah knew the word ball. He knew that word, but he chose to use the word circle. But it says in Isaiah 22:18, he will surely violently turn and toss thee like a ball into a large country. So notice he's talking about a ball being tossed. Why? Because a ball is a toy. You know why Isaiah didn't use the word ball to describe the earth? Is because a ball is a toy. It's ridiculous to describe the earth as a ball. A ball is not a shape that you would use to describe the earth. That's why we call the earth a globe or a sphere. We don't call it a ball, because a ball is a toy that's being tossed and thrown in Isaiah 22, verse 18. Let's move on. Psalm 33:14. From the place of his habitation, he looketh upon all the inhabitants of the earth. So they say, well, how could God look upon all the inhabitants of the earth? It must be flat. No, because God can do anything. And the Bible says the eyes of the Lord are in every place, beholding the good and evil. So that doesn't prove it's flat. But I've had other flat earthers come at me with, well, what about when the devil takes Jesus into a high mountain and shows him all the kingdoms of the world? That proves it's flat. Okay, well then, does that mean that at the top of Mount Everest you can see all the kingdoms of the world? Obviously that was a miracle, which is how he showed him all the kingdoms of the world and the glory of them in a moment of time. It's not because the earth was flat, it's because he was miraculously shown all those things. Because if you went up on a mountain right now, you can't see all the kingdoms of the earth. If supposedly the earth's flat, why not? So that makes no sense. Anyway, let me move on. I got to hurry, but they make up a point about the four winds and says that it proves a flat earth. How? You know, Matthew 24:31, he shall send his angels with the great sound of a trumpet, and they shall gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other. Daniel 7:2, Daniel spake and said, I saw in my vision by night, and behold, the four winds of the heavens strove upon the great sea. Jeremiah 49:36, and upon Elam will I bring the four winds from the four quarters of heaven, and will scatter them toward all those winds, and there shall be no nation with the outcasts of Elam shall not come. Now, four winds is obviously just north, south, east, and west. The north wind, the south wind, the east wind, and the west wind. What in the world does that have to do with the earth being a sphere or flat? Absolutely nothing, of course. Then another verse they use is Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. So how does that prove a flat earth? That the numeric value of Genesis 1:1 is 3.14. Which proves, of course, that it's a circle, not a sphere. Because, we all know, pi r squared is how you get the area of a circle. But here's what's so dumb about that, is that if you look for the area of a sphere, or the area, or the surface area, or the volume of a sphere, you also use 3.14. You also use pi. Just preying on people's ignorance of math, like, oh, well, 3.14, that's got to be a circle, not a sphere. That most of these flat earthers never got to the level of geometry where they're actually dealing with spheres. They were still learning the squares, circles, and triangles because they never got to the high level math. So then he just preys upon that. You know, that's why they think it's flat, because they can't understand a sphere. But anyway, that's it. That's every verse. And I've just shown you that none of them even comes close to even remotely proving that the earth is flat. And you know, let me say this also. It's funny how whenever you try to talk to these flat earthers, you try to talk sense into them, you can't get through to them because they keep moving the goalpost on you. Like, for example, they'll show you a model like this where it's just a round, flat disc, where it's totally flat. And they'll get up and say, there's no curvature. There's not any curvature whatsoever. Look at it. It's flat. No curvature, right? And then you'll start arguing with them some more. And then pretty soon they come at you with something like this. Now notice the curvature there. It looks like a chips and dips bowl, like where you put the dip in the middle. And then you have the chips all around the edge. That's not flat. So according to them, we'd all be falling off. Well, are they saying that we in the United States are sort of sideways? Kind of cocked to one side? Because if you notice the curvature there, that's what it would be. So they're constantly moving the goalposts. Sometimes it's just a circle all by itself, you know, and like this, where it's just a circle. And then other times when it's convenient for them, it's got a square around it, and it's got curvature. Other times, there's absolutely no curvature. It's completely flat. So they kind of just move it to whatever they want for that particular argument. They just keep changing. And then, you know, you'll start talking to them about how stupid the flat earth is, and then they'll just be like, oh, well, geocentricity. Oh, the firmament. They just start changing the subject to things that don't prove that the earth is flat. Now you say, why would you even make this video? Why even take the time to go through all these verses and debunk them? I'll tell you why. I'm defending the Word of God. You see, Satan would love for people to think that the Bible teaches that the earth is flat, because the vast majority of people are smart enough to know that it's not flat. So then when they hear that the Bible teaches that it's flat, it causes them to just reject the Bible out of hand. You know, when my wife was unsaved, she was raised in Germany, and she thought that the Bible taught that, you know, that, oh, the earth's flat and all this stuff. And it caused her to just have zero interest in the Bible, because she just thought, oh, the Bible is scientifically full of it, so therefore why would I listen to it? You know, then when I met her, I showed her, no, the Bible teaches that the earth is round, you know, it's a sphere, hell's in the heart of the earth. And I showed her, you know, Leviticus 15, about how God knew way more about sanitation and cleanliness and all the science behind that long before man had discovered that. I showed her where he hangs the earth on nothing. I showed her all this scientifically accurate stuff in the Bible. Then she was actually open to hearing what the Bible says. But these flat earthers are doing the work of Satan to basically make the Bible look stupid. And that's what you're doing if you're one of these flat earth people. You're going around making the Bible look stupid, and literally people will go to hell because of this kind of deception, where people won't even listen to the Bible anymore. For example, I had several people that I know personally come up to me and say, well, the Quran teaches that the earth is flat. Several people said that to me. And I went and fact-checked it, and guess what? The Quran does not say that the earth is flat. Now, the Quran's a stupid book for other reasons, but it didn't say that. But the vast majority of people who are Christians, when they hear that the Quran teaches that the earth is flat, they just automatically believe it. It's like, oh yeah, the Quran's stupid. Well, that's what the worldly people are doing. When they hear that the Bible teaches the earth is flat, they're just like, oh, well, the Bible's stupid then. People have known that the earth is round for thousands of years, okay? People have been studying astronomy. If you look at ancient history, if you look at old artifacts and archaeology, people have always been very into astronomy, and they did all the calculations even thousands and thousands of years ago, and have always known the earth is round. It's only idiots in the Dark Ages who thought that it was flat, okay, 500 years ago. It was just a bunch of Dark Age buffoons who thought that, okay, and Roman Catholics and so stuff that were teaching that as part of their way of keeping people in darkness in the Middle Ages. But before that, people knew it was round, and after that, people knew it was round. It's that simple. But honestly, my message to you, if you have been sucked into this flat earth thing, is to repent of the wicked sin of foolishness. Over and over again, God says that foolishness is a sin, and foolishness means stupidity. Don't be stupid here. Don't be a tool of Satan promoting this garbage. There are the people who are behind it. I think the people who make these videos, like, or this Rob Skiba or whatever his name is, these people are evil people. They don't even believe it's flat. They're just doing this to do the work of Satan, just to make asses out of God's people, make them all look like fools, and he's doing a pretty good job making people look like retards You say, why are you so harsh about this? Look, because I hate every false way. It makes me angry to hear the Word of God blasphemed. And every time you say the Bible teaches that the earth is flat, you are being blasphemous. You are making a mockery of the Word of God, and you need to repent of your stupidity and foolishness and quit making a mockery of the holy, eternal Word of God that is perfect in every way. And I'm here to defend the Bible and say, no, the Bible does not teach this stupidity, because there are people out there that are smart enough to know that it's round. And when they hear you say that stupidity, then they're going to turn around and say, oh, the Bible's stupid. No, the Bible's not stupid. You're stupid. And you need to get some smarts and quit talking about things you don't understand. And you need to actually learn math and science before you start trying to talk about math and science. And you need to start learning the Bible before you start talking about the Bible. Because knowing the fact that the ends of the earth is referring to the ends of the dry land, that's pretty basic. So if you can't figure that out, then honestly you need to keep your mouth shut. Because of the fact that there's so many videos on YouTube, hundreds of thousands of views, where people are being sucked into this mass psyop, this mass campaign of deception to make Christians look like fools. So, it's a dirty job, but somebody's got to do it.
What's up, everybody? How's it going out there? It's Monday. I'm going to take a little bit of time out of my day-to-day to disprove some stupid... It's ridiculous. I shouldn't even have to do this, but I feel compelled to do it. But I'm going to open this video off with a little bit of a background, or at least where my mindset is right now, okay? And it has to deal with retards, okay? People that are actually like retarded, mentally retarded. When I was younger, there's two stories I'm going to tell you, because I think both of them are pertinent to this, okay? The first is, I might have been 16 or 17, and there was a 7-Eleven that was about 100 yards from my grandmother's house where I was growing up. And I would often walk up there and play either video games or pick up a Big Gulp or a sandwich or something, because it was a Levicchio's as well, and which is like a deli, okay? And I remember one time I walked up there, and this was right next to a bus stop, like a pretty active bus stop. And I went up there one time, and as soon as I opened the door, I heard to my right, and it was loud. And I was like, what in the... And I turned to my right, and I see that there's these two guys that are retarded, right? They're retarded. And they're sitting at this table, and they're eating, and they're talking to each other. And you could not understand what they were saying, okay? Because it literally was like moaning, right? And then the other one would look at him and go, okay? They were having a conversation like that. Even to this day, I don't know if they understood each other. Even to this day, I don't. But I'm like, that loud, all right? So I go and I get my Big Gulp and I go over to the counter. The people they're still talking. Okay? And the guy at the counter is just looking at me like he wants to kill himself. And I said, dude, how long have they been in here? And he's like, over an hour. Okay? You could tell that he was frustrated and he had to keep listening for over an hour. And I was thinking to myself, well, I don't have to because I'm leaving. This is your job, fool. Enjoy. Okay? That's the first story. The second story is there was a guy, and this is after I got out of the Army, I met. The guy's name was Nick. And he was, he was a stoner and he was a liar. And, but he always presented himself as something, somewhat of a hotshot when he wasn't. He still lived at his mother's with his older brother and his younger brother, and also another younger brother. his mom sold dope, okay? Well, I go over to their house, and, you know, not the youngest, but the second to the youngest spends all of his time in his bedroom smoking weed, right? His entire day is like that. His older brother just got out of the pen for statutory rape, okay? He hooked up with some chick that was like 14 or 15 or something like that. Just got out of the pen. And his youngest brother, okay, was retarded. And probably because the mom was on dope during the time that she was pregnant or drinking or something. But he was full on mentally retarded. He was, I think at the time he might have been in his late 20s, maybe early 30s. And he had the mental capacity, I guess you could say, of maybe a 3 or 4 year old. Okay? And all he would do would be sit there and listen to his walk. Okay? And he was a nice guy and didn't really talk much or anything like that. And one day his headphones broke or his batteries died or something, and I was sitting in the living room and talking to his mom, and the brother that just got out of the pen is like, hey, let me, you know, because he was freaking out. The guy was freaking out because his Walkman quit working, and, you know, he's like, ah! He's having a fit. So the brother that got out of the pen said, well, let me take a look at that, and then I'll fix it for you. He's like, oh, get away from me! You're gross, you blah, blah. Okay, so the retarded guy is like really coming down on his older brother. Big time. Right? And his older brother's like, look, man, I'm just trying to help you. I'm just trying to help you. It's like, let me look at this. Let me figure out what's wrong, and I'll help you with. And the guy's like, oh, touch go for little kids. Right? And so he's like, all right, fine, then whatever. And he walks away. Now, the reason why those two stories are important, and they pertain to what this video is about, okay, is because it's just like dealing with a flat earth proponent, right? It's just like that. Or some of these religious people that are a little gone, right? Not the moderates, but some of the people. It's like talking to a full-blown retard. You can't get through to them. When they talk to each other, everybody else sits back and go, did you listen to that stupid that they were saying? And yet they feed off of it. Like the two retards at the 7-Eleven, right? They're sitting there talking nonsense, and yet they're communicating and they're bonding and all this other stuff. And it's the same thing with these flat earthers. Same thing. They talk nonsense. That's the first. The second story has to do with, you have this guy who's trying to help somebody, right? He's trying to help him out, and the retarded guy ends up just totally owning it, right? And this story's twofold. Okay, the first is, I would never let somebody that is mentally retarded show me up, you know, or beat me in a cut-low contest, or school me in anything, right? That's horrible, right? You just lost major points if that happens, okay? That's the first. And the second thing is, a lot of times you try to help out people that are retards, right? You try to help out people that are not very bright, you know, somebody that's on the wrong path, and what they do is they attack you for it, you know? Even though everything that the guy said about his brother was actually true, right? They still attack you for it. You can't help somebody like that, you know? You simply can't do it. Everything is perfectly level right now, and all I'm going to do is I'm just going to turn this. Now, the curve is there, okay? It's hard to see on camera because you can't see the full view like I see, okay? But if we were even higher up, at a higher vantage point, the curve is more apparent, okay? Unfortunately, There's nothing around here except this roof of an apartment complex over there. I don't think they're going to let me on. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk a little bit about the Coriolis effect. Now, this is something that's important because a lot of these flat earthers just simply don't understand it. They don't get it. They always say it doesn't make sense. It's because they don't understand it. And it's real easy to figure out. I mean, the way I'm going to describe it, a third grader should be able to figure this out. And it's an effect. It's a Coriolis effect. It's not a force. Sometimes they will call it a Coriolis force. That's not what it is. Okay? Now, the Coriolis effect, first thing, we need to understand a little bit about velocity on a circular object, right? It's almost like gear ratios, okay? In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to a record player to explain this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take just a random record that I have here, Olivia Newton-John. You probably never heard of her before. Okay, so we have Olivia Newton-John on right here. Now, if you'll notice, the outside of this record it's got a much larger circumference than this sticker right here. And if I were to put a tick mark right here, and we were to watch this, you would see that the outside of this is traveling much faster than what's traveling right here. I mean, the MCA records, we can actually read it. It's moving so slow. But if I were to put any writing out here, it would be very difficult to read because it would be moving too fast. Okay? It's just like gear ratios or anything along those lines. And it's important to understand that when we're dealing with an Earth or a sphere or anything along those lines, a planet or whatever, where the equator is, the largest portion of it is the largest portion, and it starts tapering, starts coming up like this. So the North Pole would be kind of like in this section, or the South Pole would be like that. A little bit further down would be like this, a little bit further down, blah, 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 blah. Okay? Just understand, this part travels faster than this part travels here. If you don't understand that, I highly recommend getting a record player and studying a record for a while. It's very, very simple. It's a simple concept. So let's go ahead and draw a sphere. Okay? This is our planet Earth. Okay? And we have to remember that just like a record, this thing is basically spinning. And think of it as a bunch of records that have been stacked on top of one another right here at the equator. This would be our 33 and a third. Okay? And then up here might be like a 45. Okay? Getting closer to here might be like one of those little small CDs or something. Okay? But ultimately, we have different circumferences as we start kind of cruising up. This is much larger than this area up here. Right here, straight through this, think of this as where the pole piece is for the record player, where it's basically going to be sitting right on top of it. The Earth spins counterclockwise, this direction, counterclockwise, against the clock, guys. The Earth also spins from west to east. Now, anybody that's been in the military or anything like that, or they're survivalists or whatever, understand that you should, to know, basically to be able to make like your compass, to know what direction's which, you always do we, okay? And north is on top of that, okay? So basically it's like this. So up here is the North Pole, and up here is the South Pole. They call these poles because we're dealing with a magnetic field, right? And this magnetic field is not planar or planar. You know what I mean? It's three-dimensional, and it goes around this, just like the magnet on a guitar pickup, right? We have this field that is basically doing this, okay, all the way around. Not that this really has anything to do with the Coriolis effect, but it's important to understand this stuff. So when we have our compass and we set it here, our compass has got a magnet. It's magnetized, right? And what it does is it's going to be seeking the poles. It's not going to be seeking west or east because these are actually at a right angle, okay, to the poles. This is at a right angle to it. The equator is dead center between the South and the North Pole. The equator also runs at a perfect right angle from these. This is what gives us our east and our west. When we put our compass out in our hand and we're looking and we're trying to find north and we're trying to find south, the compass needle is actually, that points north, is actually south because opposites attract, right? So even though the compass needle might be pointing like this portion of it right here has actually been charged south, okay? And then that's why it gets directed toward north, okay? But it's finding the it's going in line with the magnetic field of the Earth, okay? And then of course west and east would be on its side like this. Not that that has anything to do with the Coriolis effect, but I thought I would talk about this a little bit because the flat Earth, if you understand what's going on with a compass, it destroys the flat Earth idea. Also, anybody that has, once again, that's been in the military or whatever, that's done any type of survival stuff, knows that you can also find the direction of things by the direction of the sun. Okay? Because you can put a stick down in the ground, okay, and it's going to cast a shadow. And you can wait for a while, and that shadow's going to move. Okay? And depending on the direction of those two shadows or whatever, that can tell you what the directions are. Okay? On a flat Earth model, that does not work. That doesn't work. Okay? But the reality is, whatever. Okay? That's getting into stuff that doesn't really make a difference. But here we go. This is spinning much faster. Okay? This portion is spinning much faster than what is happening up here. And just like if I was driving a car and I decided to throw a bag of McDonald's outside the window and just drop it, it's not just going to drop straight down. It's got velocity because of inertia, right? Because it's traveling at the same speed as the car is. Even if I was just running, I don't even have to be in a car. Even if I was just running and I held out my arm and I dropped something, it wouldn't just drop straight down. If I was running in this direction, it would drop at an angle like this, okay? Because I'm letting go of it, but it's still got the inertia and everything from me holding it. It's still got that velocity in that direction, and then so it's going to be going down. It's going to be falling due to gravity, but at the same time, it's also going to be moving in the same direction that I am moving. Now, this is simple to test. If you don't believe this portion right here, there's no help for you. You're full-on blown retard. Okay, this is just the way it is. Even like I said, elementary school, I knew this. Everybody not everybody, but everybody for the most part, by the time you're in junior high, should understand this simple idea. Okay? Now, Coriolis effect is very similar to this. If I am right here, okay, and I'm doing this at the equator. At the equator, there actually is no Coriolis effect. Okay? And I know that's it. It's interesting, but it's true. And then right up here is actually the maximum amount of Coriolis effect. But if I am cruising this direction, and let's just say for the sake of argument, let's say I'm traveling at 1,000 miles an hour, okay? And I'm whipping around here. This is smaller up here, okay? This section is smaller, just like this section right here is smaller. And it is not going to be traveling at 1,000. Just for the sake of argument, let's say it's going to be traveling at 500 miles per hour. You can figure this type of stuff out, velocity, time over distance type stuff, okay? Doesn't make a difference. But, point is, I'm hauling, this is trucking too, but it's not going as fast as me. So, think of this in a way as this is not moving at all. And it is moving, but I want you to think of it as it not moving. Just like if this was the street, okay, and I'm in a car, and I'm traveling real fast, and then the street, though, is stationary. If I were to drop something, but in this case, let's think of it as shooting a cannonball or sending out a plane or doing something along those lines, I'm traveling at this velocity, and because of that, if I were to try to shoot direct north like this, it wouldn't just go straight north. Because of the velocity that I'm at, it would do it just like if I was running and I let go of that bag of McDonald's or whatever. It's going to travel in the velocity. It's going to travel in the direction that I'm going. It's going to be traveling at the speed that I'm going, and also in the direction that I launch it at. This is why when they say from the equator going up to the north up here, northern hemisphere, this would curve to the right. Okay? Curves to the right. Now, this is where a lot of the flat earthers don't understand. You have to think of it as the object itself. You are the object, okay? This is going to the right. Now, in the southern hemisphere, it goes to the left. Now, I'm drawing this, and you're saying, well, that's to the right. But from the perspective of the object, this is its left. If I'm looking at you, okay, this is my left, right? It's my left. This is what's happening, okay? It's going to the left, but it's actually, even though it's going to the right, it's going to its left. And it's going to its left for the exact same reason why this is going up to its right. I'm traveling at a velocity this direction, okay? Given speed, given direction. I let go of something or I launch it. This is much smaller. So what it's going to do is it's going to continue traveling in the direction that I'm moving, okay? And this direction, and it travels just like up here. It's very simple. It's real simple. Flat earthers don't get this. They don't understand it. They don't think it's real. Snipers know. Okay? Now this is only true really for maybe I'd say around after about, well it kind of depends, but I'm going to say probably like around 800 meters. Okay? When you get to 1,000 meters, and you're going to see a little bit more, 2,000, the further and further you go, you're going to start seeing more and more of this. You have to take into account for the Coriolis effect. You have to, because if not, you're going to miss your target, right? You can veer off, okay? Anybody that's actually been a real sniper knows this, okay? I've had a guy who claimed that he was a spotter for a sniper, and he never had to take Coriolis effect into account. Now, that either means he's lying, or that means that he wasn't very good at being a spotter for a sniper, or 3, it means that they were always close enough that they didn't have to worry about it, okay? But I don't believe the guy, okay? I mean, it's just not the way it is. Even really good hunters know about this, okay? It's reality. You can test it yourself. You can get a rifle and go out and shoot, change directions and aim and shoot in the same thing, keeping everything perfectly level, and you're going to see it's going to change where the stuff ends up falling if you don't take into account for this. But this is a Coriolis effect. And the Coriolis effect is very simple. Like I said, it's just like running down the street and dropping a bag of McDonald's. You see the thing kind of move in the same direction as you're going while it's falling. It's the exact same thing, except it's just a sphere. This is also the reason why you end up seeing hurricanes and stuff going in a certain direction, and that has to do with the high pressure and low pressure, right? Because high pressure goes to low pressure, just like hot goes to cold. Things that are in, they've got a lot of juice, things that are like really disturbed, things that are excited, they don't like that, and they want to be relaxed, so they're always going to go to an area that is more relaxed, and they're thermodynamics. So once again, just to make sure you guys understand this, oh, by the way, the whole flushing of the toilet, like northern hemisphere, southern hemisphere, go in the opposite directions, it's not because of the Coriolis effect, okay? There's a lot of people that think that, but that's not the case. Okay? So once again, we have the equator, which is at a right angle to basically right here. We got the North Pole, we got the South Pole, not that it even really makes a difference. If I were to be standing here, okay? Hey, that's a Pokemon. Okay? But anyway, if I were to be standing here and I shoot a cannonball and it's traveling miles and miles and miles and miles, what direction would it actually end up traveling? The answer, once again, it's going to curve to the right. If I'm here and I'm going to shoot toward the South Pole, what direction does it go? It's going to go this way. And do you know the reason why now? Okay? There's some of these guys, let's say that we've got, here, let's just say that this is our United States, Canada, all that other stuff. Here's Mexico, whatever. Some of these guys actually think they completely don't understand this whole this whole inertia thing. They don't understand this whole velocity thing. They think that because the world is spinning in this direction, if I were to launch it this way, it would land over here, because the Earth is spinning this direction. They're totally not taking into account the fact that you're already moving at a certain velocity. There's some of them will start talking about, why is it if we're moving so fast, why is it we're not flying off the Earth? Okay, why is it that we don't feel this type of stuff or whatever? It's just like when you're in a car and you're driving down the street, right? And if you're inside there and you decide to get a pin and you drop it, it's just going to fall straight down as if you guys aren't even moving, right? Because you and the car and everything that's inside it's moving at the exact same speed already. Right? It's like it's not going to, if you're inside a car and you hold the pin and you drop it, it's not going to shoot back, right? It's traveling at the same speed as everything else in that car. Hello everybody. This is part 2 of Flat Earthers and Retarded. They're foolish. Some people got upset in my first video because I was using the word retarded. They think that somehow it's a derogatory term. It's only a derogatory term if that's what my intentions are when using it. And when I'm referring to flat earthers, I'm using it as a derogatory term because I'm retarded. Retarded just means slow, right? It's like you're preventing the progress of something. People use the term retarded all the time in things like chemistry, when you're going to retard a chemical reaction, right? Maybe if you're mixing concrete, you throw a retarder in it so it doesn't set up as fast. If you're an auto mechanic, you might retard the timing on a distributor, right? Even in the field of medicine, if somebody has a learning disability, technically they're retarded, okay? That's just the way it is. And whether you change the word to mentally disabled or mentally slow, at the end of the day, it doesn't change the fact that the person is retarded. And when we're dealing with flat earthers, we're dealing with retards. We are also dealing with delusional people, and generally, more often than not, you're going to be dealing with liars, dishonest people. You're going to be dealing with people that use logical fallacies all the time, and you're also going to be dealing with people that are delusional. Religious fanatics. This is really that group of people. Now in this video I'm going to be covering a little bit more, even though in my first video I showed the curve of the Earth. I went out to the ocean, I took my camera and I panned it and I put a perfectly straight line. You can see it rise and you can lower. So there's some people that were saying, well, it's because of the fisheye of the camera, it's because of all this other stuff. I'm going to debunk that because that's retarded. So, here we go. Let's say that this is the curve that we saw at the ocean, okay? And this is what they say. Because of the lens being the way it is, that's the reason why we see a curve. Now, I might be almost willing to say, okay, a little bit we might see that, if the entire curve was in only one frame, like this, okay? I never moved the camera, all right? Then that might explain a little bit of distortion here, or maybe even here. Okay? But that is not what happened. The camera would have a shot here. I would pan it. You would see it here. I would pan it. You would see it here. I would pan it. You would see it here. And whatnot. There is no lens in the world that would change the curve of the horizon depending on what direction I was aiming. There isn't one. You would see a distortion that would be constant throughout all of these. You would not see a rise on this, a flat, and then a drop. You would not see that. And I know some of you people out there are talking about, well, you know, the lens and all this other stuff and the distance you would have to be, and that video didn't make sense. Look, the video is what it is. It shows a curve of the Earth. Period. All right? So that's the first thing. Now there's this one guy that had been trolling that page. He's a retarded flat earther, and I was going to dedicate the second video to him because of all the moronic things that the guy said. His lack of scientific knowledge is absolutely astounding, right? A dead animal on the street knows more about physics and math than this dumb does. But because this is exactly what he wants, is attention, I will not give it to him, and I banned him. So any comments that he puts up on from here on in, you're not going to see. He's been banned. The guy's a complete douchebag. But let's talk about some of the things that he says. First of all, he couldn't answer these questions. He kept wanting to bring up this whole 8-inch curve thing, okay? I'm going to go over that in a minute and why all these flat earthers are wrong about that too. But he brought that up. He brought up a space shuttle having engines somehow proves something. It doesn't prove anything. The space shuttle, its main engines, it has to have engines, because if not, as soon as it went off into outer space, I shouldn't say outer space, but when it went out into space, it wouldn't be able to come back home, right? It wouldn't be able to come back home. It would just follow its trajectory from the direction of how it left the Earth's gravitational field. It would just keep going on whatever tangent it went on. It would never return home. It would have to have some way that it can actually control what direction it's going. And as soon as it starts coming back into the Earth's atmosphere, it would have to have some way of controlling, once again, where it's going. It's not a hang glider. Okay, it would have to. And it uses its main engines for that. And the main engines use hydrogen and it uses oxygen. All right? It's not a jet engine like you would have in a plane. I have no idea what this whole engine thing has to do with the flat Earth, but these people will do anything and everything to move the goalpost, which is a logical fallacy. You answer one of their questions, and you ask them one, and you say, well, answer this. They won't answer it, and what they do is they move the goalpost, or they'll use a red herring, or they'll do a character attack on you. Or they'll just... These people are the dumb... But let's cover some things here that this could not answer. And there is no flat earther that can answer this. So we have a sphere that we live on. Let's say that video, my first video where I show the curve of the Earth at the ocean, that's not enough for you. You want to see it from space. Not a problem. In the 60s and the 70s, NASA had a bunch of photographs and movies and stuff from that era of the Earth. It's not fake. There was no computer generated or computer graphics or anything like that back in those days. It was not fake. It's real. You can see the curve of it. Space lab movies, all sorts. And if you don't believe that, you can also look at the other countries that have space programs that have video too. It's retarded to think that somebody is faking that. It is the dumbest thing. At the end of the day, whether the planet is flat or it's a sphere, it does not change anything in your life, positively or negatively. So why lie? Why lie? It doesn't make any sense at all why there would be every country and every physicist and every geologist and every astronomer and everybody that basically has an IQ above 80, they would all be in on it. They'd all be in on this great lie. It's stupid. But anyway, look, we got our sphere here. This is the equator. This is west. This is east. The planet travels in this direction on its spin. This is the axis of it on which it spins. Think of it as like a globe sitting on top of a record player. And then this right here would be where the rod is, the pin or whatever of the record player. Traveling this direction, we have north up here and we have south up here. The reason why we call it north and south is because of the magnetic fields, and we're going to be getting into that here in a second. Okay? Counterclockwise direction. Counterclockwise meaning that it is traveling in the opposite direction that a clock travels. Derp! Okay? So we can say CC, counterclockwise. Now, first question for you flat earthers. You have to explain this, because it will not work in your model, but it's reality, okay? We have things that we, normal human beings, like to call stars. And no matter where you are on the planet, you can pretty much see some stars at night if you look up, as long as the sky is clear. We can see stars, okay? Now, if you are on the northern hemisphere and you look up, you will notice, over a period of time, that the stars appear to be traveling in a counterclockwise direction. Okay? Cool. Now, if you are on the southern hemisphere and you look up, it would appear as if the stars, over a period of time, would travel in a counterclockwise. I'm sorry, in a clockwise direction. Explain how that could possibly happen on a flat Earth model. It only works on a sphere. It's impossible to happen on a flat Earth model. Okay? Simple test, doesn't require a telescope, doesn't require anything except some time and you laying on your back. Anyway, so explain that, fools. Let's also explain something that is called the moon. And the moon. We'll put this is the man on the moon. Okay? And the man on the moon is happy because he knows that the Earth is a sphere. And if I'm over here, we're on the northern hemisphere, and we see the moon, we see him upright like this, okay? But if you're down here on the southern hemisphere, an interesting thing happens that only happens if you're on a sphere. They see the moon like this. It's inverted. It happens on a sphere model, but it does not happen on a flat Earth model. Flat Earthers explain that. You can't, okay? So, let's go ahead and talk about something real cool, man. You're going to like this. I'm going to get a sphere. Now, we have a planet. North, south. Okay, equator. West, east. If you were standing here and you look up, you will see stars. If you're standing here and you look up, you will see stars. If you stand here and you look up, you will see stars. You will see stars. And these stars encompass the entire sphere, right, of the Earth. When we look up, no matter where we are, we're going to see star formations. Okay? There are no breaks in it. Now, the stars that the person on the South Pole sees are different than the stars that the person on the North Pole sees. Okay? It's pretty much, it is the way it is. The person on the North Pole cannot see these. The person on the South Pole cannot see these. Okay? That's the very first thing. You have to explain, once again, flat Earth model, you have to explain it. But there's some stars that we do share. So, looking north, things like these. Things like these. And of course, this would wrap around 360. This would be like a belt right here, okay? And all the stars in these areas we could share, okay? We can share. But what's happening here on the South Pole and North Pole, completely different star formations. So now let's look at this in a flat Earth model and see if this is going to work, because it doesn't. This in and of itself destroys the flat Earth model. So we have a disk, and on this disk, right here is our North Pole, and right here is our South Pole, okay? Now, interestingly enough, the South Pole is all the way around the planet. Whatever. Okay, it's stupid. But anyway, we have our continents in the middle here. Okay? And our continents, basically wrapping this way, is our east and our west. Okay? So we have star clusters that we can see, star formations in the north area, that we cannot see in the southern. Now the southern has their own as well. Okay? Just simply by the circumference of this and the size of it, you should already be able to tell what's wrong with this model. Okay? West and east. Okay, let's say that these are the stars that we share, which is not actually very accurate. It's an impossibility, because these stars on the outside of here can actually be seen by portions over here, right? Because it wraps around. Okay? But what this suggests is if you're on this portion of the South Pole, you would see stars that this portion of the South Pole could not see. That's what it would suggest. You couldn't see them. Different stars. Same thing happens here. What you see here, you could not see over here. Okay? This portion and this portion would share these stars. This portion and this portion would share that. They would share this, and they would share this. How is it possible if you're on the South Pole and you can see all of these different stars and they wrap around? How is it possible that the stars that are right here somehow wrap around and the person over here can see them? Not only that, but on the South Pole, the amount of stars that you could see would be astronomical compared to the size of what you could see here at the North. I mean, it's so stupid. The whole thing is so dumb. This in and of itself disproves a flat Earth. This in and of itself does. Just star formations. And we can keep track of them. We know what they are. We've seen them. The shapes of them. We know of the patterns, right? They wrap around. Okay? They wrap around. We can all see them. This would also suggest that there's some stars out here that it's just like there's stars out here that basically can never ever be seen. Like we couldn't get a full view of the universe 360. Like we couldn't possibly do it, right? There would always be a portion that you just simply couldn't see. Not from it. You'd have to be right here on the edge to look out in order to see these stars. Bull. The whole thing is a crock. Stars on this side could not magically wrap around and show up over here and wrap around and show up over here. It's impossible. On the South Pole, or anywhere in the southern hemisphere, when you start getting closer to the South Pole, doesn't even have to be on the pole, but when you start getting closer, you can see all of these stars just in one location, right? According to this, you'd have to be in different spots to see them. Whole thing's bull. But let's talk a little something else. Let's talk about magnetic fields. Okay? This is what's known as true north. This is what's known as true south because it's on the axis. Okay? Now, anybody that knows anything really about navigation knows that there's a difference between true north and magnetic north and grid north. And I'm going to get into all those right now because I'm going to learn you something. Magnetic north is actually not dead on north. And magnetic south is not actually dead on south. It's off a little bit. Probably around 1,200 miles or so if I recall correctly. But it's off a little bit. It's not exactly right. Okay? And we have the strongest portion of any magnetic field is always at the actual poles itself, like whether it's a bar magnet or whatever. It's always like that. And it tries to find its opposite, okay? And it creates this magnetic field 360 degrees on the planet. Just like this, okay? Now, a compass does not actually point true north. It points towards the magnetic north. But it does not really point toward the magnetic north and the magnetic south pole. What it does is it follows the magnetic field of it. And the magnetic field is not a perfectly straight line. If you could actually see these magnetic fields, and they have maps and stuff of this, and people that navigate over long distances know about this. Whether it's on a ship or it's on a plane, they know about this. You would actually see that it might do curves like this, okay? And then it almost might look like wood grain, okay? Because that's just the way that these magnetic fields are. And they shift, they change a little bit, okay? The compass is going to be pointing in the direction of the magnetic field, not necessarily north. So you could be standing here, and north would be this direction on your compass. And if you were standing here, north might be like this, because it's following the magnetic field and it's not following the actual true north. Now, we know about this. Anybody that's done any land nav courses, been in the Army and stuff, they know about the magnetic north and true north and stuff like that. And they give you a map of a certain area. Depending on where you are in the world, you're going to see different things on this map. You're going to see what's known as a declination diagram. And the declination diagram looks like this. Okay? You'll have one thing that will be pointing like this, and this is what is known as magnetic north. You'll have one up like this, it'll have a star, and this is what is known as true north, and you might see something right here that's known as grid north. Okay? And this has got a certain angle on it right here. 7 degrees or whatever. It doesn't make a difference. It depends. It changes depending on where you are on the planet. And this is just so that way when you're looking at the map, you can always tell the difference between true north, magnetic north. You can adjust your compass appropriately, and that way you know you're actually going in the right azimuth. You're going in the right direction, right? They have this. Depending on where you are on the planet, it changes. Magnetic north on one map might be over here. Okay? This might not even exist right here. It changes depending on where you are on the planet. Now, riddle me this, flat earthers. Explain this on a flat earth model. Because this would not work on a flat earth model. Okay? This would not work on a flat earth model. You have to explain to me, and everybody else out there, how the magnetic fields on a flat earth model work. Okay? We know how it works on the earth. Okay? But how could we have a disk, a plate, okay, where the North Pole is here, the South Pole is out here, everything else is in between? You're going to have to explain to me these magnetic fields. There is not one thing on the planet that you could charge that would have a magnetic field that was a disk like this, where this would be north and everything out here is south. It doesn't work that way, okay? It doesn't work that way. There is entirely too much mass, there is entirely too much matter out here in relation to the small section here. You cannot have a magnetic field that would look like a pie. There is nothing on the planet that is like that. You cannot mimic this. It's impossible, okay? Because of the way that magnetism works. You can't do it. You can't have something that's this large that contains the South Pole and something that's in this small area that contains the North Pole. You can't do it. It doesn't add up. Explain it. Explain your stupid flat earth magnetic field. It's garbage. And you will find, if you have your magnetic north here, where is your magnetic south? How does that work with the declination diagram? Doesn't. So let's talk a little bit about this 8-inch curve thing, okay? Because you're going to see this a lot. And it's some of the worst math, some of the worst geometry, trigonometry, all that. It's some of the worst stuff you ever see in your life, okay? So this is basically what this is all about, okay? Let's say we have a sphere here. You have a dude that's up here. He's a flat earther. IQ, -80. And what he wants to do is he wants to figure out the curvature, okay? Curvature drop of a certain distance. So what he does is he has a tangent line that goes a certain distance, okay? Which is basically straight off. It's a right angle to basically gravity here, okay? And it's shooting off this direction. And the way that this works, and this is a simple formula for it, is basically the distance squared and you multiply that by 8 inches, okay? And that basically means that for every mile, what you do is you take the distance and you go ahead and multiply it by itself, and then you multiply it by 8. So if this was 2 miles, and then this is in miles, so what we would end up doing is we'd say, okay, 2 times 2, well, we know that that's 4, and then 4 times 8 is 32, so we'd be dealing with 32 inches of curvature from point A to point B, okay? Okay, does this prove anything about a flat earth or round earth? Nothing really yet, okay? But that's the first thing that we need to keep in mind, that this is how they're going about doing it. And you'll find that some of the people use this argument. This guy is in San Francisco, and right over here is like Hawaii, okay? And they think that there is a hump between these two land masses that's over 700 miles high. And I'm going to explain why this is the worst math and worst way of thinking and ever, okay? Because what they're doing is they're using this tangent line to figure out the curve. And what they'll do is, I think the distance between Hawaii and San Francisco is somewhere around 2,400 miles, okay? So what you do is 2,400 times 2,400 times 8, and you're going to come up with 5 million something, okay? So it's a large number. It's going to come up with like that. So then what you have to do is you have to divide it by 12, because we're dealing with inches, right? Because we multiply by 8 inches, and we want to get feet, so we divide it by 12. And then after we end up dividing that by 12, we have to divide it by how many feet are in a mile. And if I remember, that is 5,280 feet per mile. And at the end of it, you get 700 and something. 725, 723 or something along those miles, okay? Off the tangent line. The distance from here to here, okay, off the tangent line. But that is not the distance we are dealing with. The hump is this distance. Okay? The hump is this distance. This is what we need to solve. Not this! This is what we need to solve. You stupid. And, I mean, in their mind, it's almost like they're standing here. They're standing here, and the world is doing this. And Hawaii would be up here in their mind. That's like the way that they're thinking. And not only that, but when they do this and they start talking about, horizon and distance and not being able to see things, they're always forgetting about gravity, how people are standing. They're always doing a tangent line directly off the surface of the earth, like the person's head is part of the soil. That's where their eyes are facing. Or like the person's facing it downward, laying on the ground. They never think about the vision, like where the people's eyes are. Because if that's above, then this doesn't really make a difference too much, does it? It's not going to get in the way. They don't know what they're talking about. It's the worst you've ever seen in your life. But I am not going to be doing any more videos on this subject. I'm done with it. It's a waste of my time. Anybody that has an IQ of above 80 knows. I mean, it's such a waste of time. The people are delusional trolls. You cannot get through to them. Even if I put them in a spacecraft and I took them up and turned around so they could see the Earth, they would still deny it because they would say, "Oh, it's computer generated. Those aren't actually windows. That is a computer image of the thing." Or, what you did is you drugged me. You gave me a drug and this is an induced hallucination. It's not really real. Or they're going to say, "Oh, we never even left the planet. This is all a soundstage." They'll come up with some reason. You cannot get through to people that are basically mentally inferior. They're people that they're retarded. They are delusional. They are in denial of reality. They think that the moon is a plate. They think the moon is a plate. You can tell that the moon is not a plate because if you take a telescope and you look at it, even a set of binoculars, come on, and you look at it, and if the sun is hitting it, right, you'll see that in this area, you won't see a lot of shadows on the craters and on the mountainous areas and stuff like that. But on the outside, you do. Okay? You can only get that on a sphere. You can only get that on a sphere, and you're going to see that they get gradually bigger because of the angle of the light hitting it. They're fully, okay? Some of them think that the planets don't exist. Get a telescope and look at the planets and tell me they don't exist. You stupid. You should be ashamed of yourself. Stupid. And you've got the biggest mouths. Every one of you are all smug. You guys have huge mouths. You're so arrogant. You think you know everything and you know nothing. You're constantly insulting everybody, telling them that they're all brainwashed and how they only repeat what they've been told in school and they're stupid and they don't know the truth and just do research, and you never give any evidence at all to support your position. You people are pathetic. You're losers. You're the dumbest who's ever walked on the planet. What they should probably do is have an event in the Special Olympics where only flat earthers compete against one another. So that way the people that are like really mentally disabled can sit back and look at people that are even worse off than them and, watch them compete against one another. Every one of you flat earthers, you guys are stupid. You guys are wasting people's times. You guys are also are abusing children, because any child that sees your stuff, they might actually end up believing some of this. And then that's child abuse. When you lie to a child and convince them of something that is not real, and something that can damage them in the future, right? That's child abuse. Every one of you should be ashamed of yourself. I wish the government would go around finding all these flat earthers and force them to go psychiatric help. Force them to. Because every single one of them is nuts. They're crazy. They're stupid. And that is all I have to say about this. And for some of you guys that are watching out there, you guys were waiting to see if there was an Easter egg. There was no Easter egg in this, okay? There wasn't one on my other video either. But in the future, I will be doing the Easter eggs. But not in this one, okay? This one is my last video on this subject. I'm done. I'm walking away from it. I can't believe I even did 2 videos on it. Done. Anyway, guys, until next time, I will talk to you later.
He spreads out the northern skies over empty space, and he suspends the Earth over nothing. Job 26.7. The Earth is suspended in space, the obvious comparison being with the spherical sun and moon. The ancient Sumerians perceived the Earth 3600 BCE to be one of the many spherical globes circling the sun, since everything in the sky was round and the moon can be seen to be a spherical object. In the Middle Ages they believed the Earth was in the center of our solar system. The Sumerians were able to draw planet Saturn with the circle on a clay tablet 3600 BCE. Now, the smoking gun proof. From 5 different locations people have sent balloons to the edge of space. Balloon, the edge of space, South Australia. South Australia is one of closest locations near the edge of the world. High altitude balloon near space project New Zealand. New Zealand lies even closer to the edge of the world than southern Australia. Near space balloon GoPro Project Cyrus, Brazil. Brazil can be considered as the nearest location of the edge of the world. GoPro into Space Balloon HD, Argentina 2014. Argentina is, according to the Flat Earth map, close to the edge of the world. Creme de la creme, West Antarctica spider balloon launch. Antarctica is considered as the edge of the world according to the flat earth theory. However, the footage shows you something very different. In all 5 videos, the camera were spinning 360 degrees. Now hold a tennis ball, and when you point 5 spots on different locations on the ball, you discover quickly you are always in the center of the ball. Just like in the 5 videos. The distance between the horizon and the camera always remains the same, no matter you are in Holland, New Zealand, Spain, Australia, Brazil, Argentina or Antarctica, which is not possible when the Earth is flat. So my conclusion, the flat Earth theory, it basically comes down that the free thinkers are not thinking free at all, especially when critical questions are being asked. This video proved that the flat Earth theory can be considered as a hoax to test the intelligence of humankind, and the current scientific studies are based on error. And the more complicated theories, the better, because for many people the unknown happens to be more convincing. And there is no need to theorize any longer. The Earth is flat.
Number 10. All the other planets and stars we've ever seen are round, and there's no reason to indicate that the Earth should be any different. Number 9. Time zones. Day and night happen at different times at different places on Earth. In fact, it's always day somewhere and night somewhere else. Number 8. The Coriolis effect means freely moving things like cannonballs or hurricane winds are deflected to the right, but only if you're north of the equator. If you're south of the equator, they're deflected left. Number 7. Triangles. If you walk 10,000 kilometers straight along the Earth's surface, turn 90 degrees to your right, walk 10,000 kilometers more, turn right again and walk another 10,000 kilometers, you'll be back to where you started, having successfully made a triangle with 3 90-degree angles. As any geometry student can tell you, this is impossible on a flat surface. Number 6. The sun, in general, gets lower and lower in the sky as you travel away from the equator, and you can use this to directly measure the Earth's curvature. Pick 2 places a few hundred miles directly north and south of each other, and at noon measure the shadows cast by a vertical meter stick at each location. You can use the shadow lengths to figure out the angle between the sticks, and once you add in how far apart they are, you can calculate the Earth's curvature. Number 5. The stars at night change as you go north or south. For example, Orion is upside down if you're in Australia. Number 4. Ferdinand Magellan, and many people afterwards, circumnavigated the Earth. That means he left headed west, continued going west, and came back to where he started, still going west. Actually, Magellan was dead, but one of his ships, led by Juan Sebastian Elcano, finished the journey. If you head west and circumnavigate the Earth yourself, you'll be able to tell because you'll observe 1 fewer sunrise than everyone who stays at home. Number 3. The horizon. Ships on the ocean or tall Chicago buildings viewed over Lake Michigan disappear bottom first. And you can see the sunset twice if you watch it lying down and then quickly stand up. The simple fact is, if the Earth were flat, there wouldn't be a horizon beyond which things could disappear, so from across Lake Michigan you'd be able to see all of Chicago, as well as the Rocky Mountains. Number 2. During a lunar eclipse, the shadow of the Earth on the moon is curved. And number 1. We know the Earth is round because we have photographic evidence.
Hey there, how's it going? Greetings from Baños, Ecuador, South America, in the southern hemisphere, just a little ways south of the equator. I just thought that I would start off this video showing the amazing views from my hotel room here. Just thought people might be curious to see where I'm at. That will show why the flat Earth models are absolutely incorrect. So I'm going to put on the screen here, first of all, a depiction of the flat Earth map as many have conceived it to be. There are, of course, various maps and models and images and whatnot showing the possible flat Earth scenarios. But here's a basic map that just gives you the general idea. So now let's take a look at the currently accepted map of the world, which itself is going to be distorted, obviously, from a globe, because this is a flat map here. But just to show the difference between the commonly accepted map of our continents and oceans versus the flat Earth map. And now let's go back to the flat Earth map. So the basic flat Earth model goes kind of like this. So take a look at this map, and now imagine that the North Pole, as you can see, is at the center of the map, and the continents then spread out from there, and then you have a circular disc-shaped Earth. In this map of the flat Earth, the continents, as you could see, have a different configuration from the normal, commonly accepted Earth map. The oceans are much wider, and that is to compensate for the fact that you're looking at a circle rather than the square map. The continents go out from the center, and so what's the deal then with Antarctica? So the explanation for Antarctica, as the flat earthers explain it, is that Antarctica is actually not a continent that is on the bottom of the globe. A roughly circular, obviously it's not a circle, but a kind of sort of circular-ish continent. Instead, Antarctica is actually an ice ring that circles the planet. So the very edge of this flat Earth map, then, is where Antarctica is, going around all of the continents, and it is actually a ring of ice. And so people are just misinterpreting it. So that's what the flat earthers say. And that is why you can't find the edge of the Earth, is because no matter what you do, when you head south, then you hit this ice ring. Now this on its face is absolutely absurd. And here's why. It's absurd for a lot of reasons, but one reason that you can easily picture and quickly understand is that the perimeter of Antarctica then, if it is true that it is an ice ring, would be massively longer to traverse than if it were a continent. The continent of Antarctica, as it is believed by the globists, the globe Earth believers, is somewhere in the neighborhood of 11 to 14,000 miles if you try to go around it, depending on exactly how you calculate that, just as a rough number. By comparison, the ice ring that is proposed by the flat Earth people, this would be something like 60 to 80,000 miles. So that's a pretty huge discrepancy. However, forget about Antarctica. We're not going to talk about Antarctica in this video. And so let's focus on that which we can more easily relate to in a real-world sort of a way, which is the rest of the southern hemisphere, which is where I am, as I mentioned. And so here is the ultimate question that you have to ask yourself in the course of pondering this enigma, this mystery of what really is the shape of the Earth, which is, which map are the navigators of the world using to so precisely get around this planet? The pilots, the commercial air pilots, the private pilots, the sailors of the world, are they using a globe Earth map, or are they using a flat Earth map? So the flat Earth map has, as you could see in that image, a very different conception of the oceans. And so what they have done is they have filled in the gaps between the continents with more ocean so that you can get the circular shape with the continents still looking more or less like they do on the other commonly accepted map. So let's just imagine here for a second that you have a globe that is two salad bowls that are on top of each other that fit together seamlessly. And so this is, of course, the commonly accepted globe model of the Earth. And so that in itself is necessarily going to distort that image by taking a salad bowl. Imagine you just stomp on it, and then those sides go splayed out, and then you're going to have some gaps in the places between the plastic of that salad bowl. And so you have a distortion between the flat Earth model and the globe Earth model immediately with the northern hemisphere. So that top of the salad bowl is the northern hemisphere. And so that's going to be distorted itself. But then it is with the southern hemisphere that things get really whacked out. So you take that bottom salad bowl, and then you take it and you turn it upwards like this, so that the southern hemisphere then makes a ring that continues around the rest of that flat Earth map. And so that map is wildly divergent from the map that is currently accepted. As you can see, for example, in the flat Earth map versus the regular Earth map, then the oceans between Australia and South America are wildly different. The ocean between Australia and South America in that flat Earth map is like 3 or 4 times as wide as the regular map. Which map are the navigators of the world using? The oceans are very, very big, and you have to have extreme precision with your maps in order to find something out there in those vast oceans, in which you have thousands of flights per day, millions of flights per year, and they are nailing their target 99.99999% of the time. Airplanes almost never get lost. Air travel is incredibly safe for 2 main reasons. One is that the technology is extremely precise and dead on as far as physics when it comes to creating an airplane and then flying it through the air. The second is that the navigation systems are incredibly precise and spot on as well. Because if your navigation system is off by a fraction, by a few percent, how are you going to find Fiji in the South Pacific Ocean? How are you going to find it? And so if you have the wrong map, if the Earth is in fact a flat plane and not a globe, and yet you are looking at a globe map showing that ocean between Australia and South America, and you go try to find Fiji, good luck. You ain't going to find it. 1 in a million chance. Obviously, Captain Cook actually did not find Fiji. He found Tahiti. But there is, of course, a chance that you could stumble across it, but not with the current modern air travel hitting their target dead on 99.999% of the time. So I want to sort of pull back for a minute from the internet images and whatnot here and try to imagine the real world, this massive planet that we are on, whether it is a globe or a flat plane. Not non-stop, but I have been on 10 international trips of several months each. I have flown over the Pacific Ocean, I think, 10 or 11 times or something, back and forth on different trips. And so I want to give a little sort of conception of what that experience is like. I'm sure many of you watching this will have experienced that as well, but in case you haven't. So just to put things into perspective here, if you want to fly from, say, San Francisco, California on the western coast of the United States to New York City on the eastern coast of the US, then that flight is about 6 hours, a direct flight. By comparison, if you want to fly from San Francisco, California to, let's say, Hong Kong across the Pacific Ocean, that flight is something like 14 to 16 hours. So that distance is 2.5 times the width of the North American continent across the US. That is a really long ways. And that is vast, empty ocean. There is nothing else there except Hawaii and I think Guam until you get to like the Philippines and then the Asian continent and like 1 or 2 other specks of islands. So there's practically nothing out there except wide open ocean. And so just to give a little visual to this here, then you take off from San Francisco in a jet that is going almost the speed of sound, roughly like 600 miles an hour. And it gets up to cruising speed of an elevation of, around 30,000 feet or so. Commercial jets fly those kinds of distances at, 28,000, 35,000 feet, somewhere around there. So, like 5 to 7 miles up in the air. And so you're sitting there on a plane looking out the window and looking out at that vast ocean. You can see so far it is such a huge area that you are witnessing from that vantage point. And yet, what you are seeing is just like the tiniest fraction. You still have, 13 and a half or whatever hours to go that you're going to sit there in that plane flying across this empty ocean at almost the speed of sound, 600, whatever miles an hour. So the point is, these oceans are incredibly, incredibly vast. You do not just sort of wander out there and then find Fiji. So you have to ask yourself then, which map are those pilots using? What is their navigation system based on? If the Earth is in fact a flat plane, as the flat earthers say, and yet you're looking at a globe Earth map in your navigation system, you ain't gonna find Fiji. No way in hell. It ain't gonna happen. Certainly not with 99.9999% accuracy. And so as I explained, then there is a massive discrepancy between that flat Earth map and the globe Earth map. As soon as you hit the equator, then those discrepancies go wildly divergent, because the southern hemisphere, as we conceive it as the globe, at the equator, just north of here, then from there things start closing back in. According to the flat Earth model, things actually continue splaying out further. And so that is why you get this incredible difference in the oceans in the southern hemisphere on that flat Earth map. Australia and South America being 3 or 4 times further apart than in the map that we know and love and for the most part accept today. And so here then is your undeniable fact that destroys the flat Earth argument. You cannot navigate this planet, this Earth, with the wrong map. Period. End of story, end of discussion. Don't waste your time trying to argue this one and embarrass yourself, because you can't do it. That is impossible. However, there is an out on this, and I'm sure that the flat earthers will bring this up if I don't address it. And so that is that the pilots of the world do in fact have the correct map. They have the flat Earth map in their navigation systems, and they're just not telling us about it. So I'm assuming that this is where the flat earthers would go next, if you can understand and accept that just basic, just incontrovertible fact that you cannot navigate this planet if your map is that wildly off from the reality of what the landscapes and the oceans and the islands actually look like, what those distances actually are. And then here's something else to consider. That distance from Australia to South America is way longer than it is in the regular globe Earth map. And so what flat earthers like to provide as evidence for their flat Earth map is the fact that is true, that it is actually a more direct route to fly from Australia to South America via North America. So take a look at the map again, and you can see that that is absolutely true. It is a more direct line across North America to South America, and the truth also is that almost all flights from Australia to South America actually do fly through North America. And so this is certainly a rather intriguing and eye-opening thing, and so flat earthers are jumping all over this. There is a simple explanation for this phenomenon. It is called supply and demand. 90% of Earth's population exists in the northern hemisphere. And so the reason that flights are going from Australia to South America via North America, there are more populations in the northern hemisphere, and so there are simply more flights that are going both ways. There just aren't that many people that want to fly from South America to Australia. There aren't that many people in Australia, period. However, the flat Earth people that are offering this as evidence are incorrect. That all flights are going this route. Because Qantas Airlines announced recently a new direct flight from Sydney, Australia to Santiago, Chile. And that flight takes 13 hours. You cannot traverse that distance on a flat Earth map in 13 hours in a commercial jet that goes 600 or so miles an hour. You would have to be going like 1,500 miles an hour or more, twice the speed of sound, which commercial jets cannot do, in order to traverse that much longer distance on the flat Earth map from Australia to South America. So back to the possibility that the airlines of the world could be part of this worldwide conspiracy, that they know the truth about the flat Earth and are hiding it from us, and that they actually have flat Earth maps in their navigation systems, and that is why they are able to get to their destinations correctly. So you have to then imagine that thousands and thousands of airline pilots are in on this conspiracy to hide the flat Earth. So just think for a second if that actually makes sense to you, that thousands and thousands of airline pilots can actually be part of this massive conspiracy to hide the truth of the flat Earth from us. The thing is that it does not stop with the commercial airline pilots. The people programming their navigation systems obviously would have to be part of that conspiracy as well. The maintenance workers who are refueling the planes would have to be in on it as well, because they would have to know how much fuel they're going to put in this plane, because if you're going to fly that direct route that Qantas Airlines just announced from Australia to South America, and the span of that ocean is actually 3 times as long as most people would assume based on the globe Earth map, then you have to have 3 times as much fuel in that plane. Then there's the problem, of course, that you simply can't traverse that distance in 13 hours. But let's just continue with this vein here of how many people would have to be in on this conspiracy. So now you have all of the airline pilots of the world. You have all of the navigation system computer experts that are designing the navigation systems in these planes. You have the maintenance workers. But it isn't just commercial pilots that are flying around the world. It is also private pilots, and so they have to have their correct maps, or you would be hearing about, private planes disappearing left and right down there. These sailors of the world have to have the correct maps, and so that includes those sailing the massive commercial cargo ships. That means those sailing the cruise ships. That means those sailing their private yachts. You don't have to be a 33rd degree Mason or whatever to get a sailing license and go sailing off into the blue seas of the southern hemisphere. And so now you have a situation in which anyone who is navigating the southern hemisphere, who is not driving a car on a road, but is out in the oceans or in the skies, they have to have the correct map. Period, end of story, end of discussion. Or there would be 90 whatever percent of people just disappearing down there, running out of gas, planes falling out of the air when they run out of fuel, etc. So all these people now have to have the correct flat Earth map. They have to be in on the conspiracy as well, or they can't traverse that part of the planet. And yet it doesn't stop there. Now let's take things into the past. So it's World War II. World War II extended into the South Pacific. And so all of those guys flying those little, planes down there, they had to know what the real configuration of that ocean was, where those islands were as well. They had to have the right maps. Period. End of story, end of discussion. It's World War II. You're a normal civilian. You decide, I'm enlisting, I'm going to go fight these evil Nazis. And so you want to be a pilot. And then they take you into some briefing room at some point and they say, all right, son, we have a little something we got to explain to you here. The Earth, it's actually not a globe. The Earth is actually flat. And so it kind of screws things up once you get down into the southern hemisphere there. We're going to need you to have the correct map so that you can find those little islands. We need you to go bomb. And so here you go, son. Here is a real map of the planet Earth. Hallelujah, good luck, God bless you. Hope you find that island. And then none of these people are talking. Thousands, at this point we're approaching millions of people who have to be in on this conspiracy in order for this navigation of the planet to actually work. and yet nobody's talking. So, World War II, let's take things back to the 16th century. So Christopher Columbus, as we know, sailed the ocean blue and found America in 1492. The 1500s, the Spanish are heading to South America in the southern hemisphere, and so they are sailing these waters, and they are doing it very proficiently. They are all making maps. So I refer to the fact that Columbus and Magellan and Cook, these sailors didn't have maps of where they were going, but they were obviously making maps as they were going along. And what do their maps look like? Their maps correspond with the globe Earth model. They don't have flat Earth maps. They got globe Earth maps. Cartography at that time was pretty good. Not exact, but pretty darn good. And so if you are not convinced yet, if you're going to say this conspiracy keeps going, then you have to try to imagine that the map makers of the 16th century then were creating globe Earth maps as part of this conspiracy theory to fool the future. And then meanwhile they were actually at the same time creating real flat Earth maps. And then they were hiding those flat Earth maps, and then they planted the globe Earth maps, which we now have and we can see today. And none of those flat Earth maps have actually emerged and been found. But we have the globe Earth maps. And so all of the sailors of the past 500 years of sailing around the world, not to mention the past 100 years of flying around the world, all of these people are in on this grand conspiracy to, for some bizarre reason that doesn't even make any sense, fool the modern age into thinking that the Earth is flat. There is actually one guy that is talking. There is a former airline pilot, flew for 20-something years as a commercial pilot, and he is now saying that he believes in the flat Earth model. There is a cruel irony to his story, though, which is that his story actually proves the globe Earth model. The thing is that he didn't actually think the world was flat when he was flying. It was after the fact that he became convinced of the flat Earth models, and now he is saying, I can't believe that whole time that I was an airline pilot, I thought the world was round, when these flat Earth theories make so much sense. And so that is a far cry from this guy saying, no, the world is flat. I was using flat Earth maps when I was an airline pilot for those 20-something years. When I became an airline pilot, I was briefed and I was told, guess what, buddy? The Earth is flat. You're going to have to rearrange your conception of the planet in order to be able to fly your plane properly. He's not saying anything like that happened. After he was finished being a commercial pilot, he then decided, oh, I think the world is actually flat. So this actually confirms the globe Earth theory. Why? If he now believes that the Earth is flat, yet he flew a plane for those 20-something years, he obviously had the globe Earth maps when he was flying that plane. Or he would have said in this video, I knew the whole time that I was flying that the Earth was flat. I was looking at flat Earth maps. I was in on the conspiracy. I knew it. And I'm now divulging that information to you all. But that isn't what he's saying. He's saying, my God, this whole time, I thought the world was round as I was flying around it. So he was obviously looking at round Earth maps. And now he's saying the Earth is flat. So that is, very ironically, kind of the little missing piece of the puzzle here that tells you a flat Earth believer was using globe Earth maps, obviously, when he was a commercial pilot. Does that make any sense to you? If you're not convinced yet, then I don't know what to tell you, but good luck with your quest for truth. Case closed. Thanks for watching. Take it easy.